It all begins one day when, out of nowhere, bluish gates appear all over the world. These gates just stayed right where they were and didn't affect citizens' lives much. In the middle of all this chaos is our protagonist, Han Yujin. He is an orphan, and like Cinderella, he had to work himself to the bone. The people at his workplace seem polite towards him. They toss a bottle of water his way and compliment his hard work. They ask Yujin what he plans to do with his pay, and he replies that he needs it for his brother's tuition fee. He begins to share the story of how they became orphans when they were just little. Because of this, he had to drop out of school to support his younger brother. Our hard worker even shows them a picture of himself with his brother, proudly commenting on his brother's physique. He continues murmuring about his little brother in the way someone overly protective might. He mentions that his brother's school is ending early today, and they plan to hang out for a barbecue afterward. Once they've loaded up the truck and are ready to head out, they start arguing about the increasing amount of work they've been dealing with lately. As they make their way to the delivery, a new gate suddenly appears above them. Our hardworking orphan, still preoccupied with thoughts of his brother, points out that a gate has also appeared on the route his brother takes to college. Yujin observes that the gate appears to be a different color than the typical blue they are accustomed to seeing. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes as something slams into their truck from behind, prompting our hero to swiftly exit the vehicle to investigate the whole situation. What he sees leaves everyone in a state of bewilderment. A pterodactyl-like monster looms over him, seemingly ready to attack. Just as he thinks that dealing with one creature is enough trouble, a whole swarm of these monsters emerges from the gates. These gates serve as gateways connecting Earth to what are known as dungeons. In a manner similar to the scenarios found in anime or manga worlds, if these gates remain unattended and unrated, they can burst open, leading to what is known as a dungeon break. And if multiple gates were to explode simultaneously, this scenario would later be referred to as the dungeon shock, a threat probably no one was ready for. This incident changed the lives of many as millions died in it. Yujin spots a wooden stick and hurries to save his boss, who remains inside the truck. Upon reaching him, he discovers that his boss is bravely holding his ground against the monster. It appears he has undergone an awakening, gaining strength to confront these creatures. Individuals who experience such awakenings are referred to as hunters, and the act of hunting monsters in the dungeons quickly becomes the most vital occupation in the world. On that day, Yujin's little brother, Han Yu-hyun, also undergoes an awakening and burns out the monsters in his pitch-black flames. The brother whom our hero has cherished and loved so deeply awakens as the world's first S-ranked hunter. 8 years have passed ever since the great incident happened. A news reporter is interviewing a lady hunter. The lady hunter reveals her status window, which is apparently only visible to the hunters. Seeing these status windows gives the awakened a feeling as if they were summoned into a game. The female hunter, named Yumi, uses a nature attribute skill that instantly grows trees out of thin air. Apparently, she has used the skill to save many people. 8 years ago, during the time of the great incident, Yumi found herself broke and struggling to find a job. Her room was a mess, filled with fungi when suddenly she discovered her ability to use this skill. The next thing she knew, she was hired as a hunter and began raiding dungeons alongside her small guild. Despite their scary nature, these dungeons offered plenty of opportunities, as all the byproducts could be sold for a significant amount of money, especially if they were A-ranked. A new resource that humans began to mine from these dungeons was called magic stones, and they became the primary reason higher-ranked adventurers quickly amassed wealth. Among all these high rankers was Yujin's little brother, who gained fame in a remarkably short time. Growing up as an orphan, he relied on his brother's hard work to support him. Not only was he among the youngest to awaken, but he also became the youngest guildmaster. Rumor has it that his assets are far more than anyone could possibly imagine. The scene shifts back to the news reporter, who asks Yumi if she has also become rich. Yumi denies this, explaining that she is only an E-ranker and has been saving up to cover her younger sister's fees. The next day, no one had the slightest idea that this lady hunter would soon become a part of history. The unfortunate soul enters a dungeon raid and meets her end. Though she is taken to the hospital, her condition is far worse than anyone could hope to recover from. As every coin has a flip side, so did becoming hunters. There was no guarantee you would see your family again once you stepped in. The scene transitions to a gate site where hunters are preparing to charge in. One of them raises his voice against the leader, criticizing the decision to bring a handicapped individual, referring to our protagonist, along for the raid. Yujin tries to convince the guy that he can provide them with buffs, but the bully continues to taunt him. He mocks our boy for being a useless hunter who survives on scraps. The reason our hero is known as the Nurturer is that aside from his skills, he somehow manages to survive even when everyone else perishes in a dungeon. The bully pushes Yujin's buttons, claiming that not even his little brother cares for him. This infuriates our hero, who reacts violently, demanding the guy to shut his mouth. Unfortunately for him, he ends up getting kicked by the bully. The bully grabs Yujin by the collar, making him acutely aware of the difference in strength between an E ranker and a D-ranked hunter. He then shoves him to the ground, taunting him to complain to his brother. Beaten and in pain, our F ranker coughs as he struggles to recover. The leader approaches him and uses his skills to bolster Yujin's strength. He questions why Yujin would hurt himself before even entering the dungeon and tries to calm him down. The old geezer attempts to make him see that he is just a nobody and needs to remain humble. My guy gives him a smile, thanking him for letting him in his party despite his low rank. They act all buddy-buddy, and after this, the old man approaches the bully, slapping him on the head and telling him to cut out the bullying. Meanwhile, Yujin activates his skill, placing the leader, Lim Seokwoo, under his influence. With everything settled, the group gathers together and steps into the dungeon. If nothing else, our hero is certain that he will survive using this very influence skill. Upon entering the dungeon, the raid team is greeted by a swarm of bat monsters that seem to have flown straight out of a Pokemon game. The team quickly takes their positions and takes them out. They argue with each other to stay cautious as monsters can come unannounced from anywhere. While the team is busy defeating the monsters and collecting magic stones from them, our F-ranker finds himself forced into mining duties. The worst part is that 80% of whatever he digs up will be taken as commission. The bully yells at him to speed up the digging, warning that he'll starve to death if he doesn't. Our hero wonders if he could secretly stash the stones in his pocket, but feels scared at the thought of getting caught and facing severe punishment. In an attempt to console himself, he recalls the story of Cinderella, comparing his situation to hers. He remembers the day his brother left home, leaving him all alone. While he worked tirelessly, his brother was busy assembling a new guild called the World's Edge. Soon, his brother's guild grew into the largest and strongest in the world, and the distance between the two siblings continued to widen to the point where Yujin could no longer approach his little brother. Left alone, our hero became eager, wondering how different things might have been if he had awakened. Driven by this determination, he spent all his savings on a broker who promised to awaken him. The broker deceived him into believing he would become an S-ranker and forced him to endure a series of disgusting trials. As a result, our hero did awaken, but only as a meager F-ranker. The broker exploited him in every way possible, and then tossed him aside, just like everyone else had. The media made a mockery of him, and his very brother, whom he had supported with everything he had, declared him a disgrace. Upon awakening, everyone receives a title, and the one Yujin received was Nurturer. However, his brother ridiculed this title, telling him it was nothing more than an embarrassment for him. As if this wasn't enough, to add insult to injury, our poor boy got injured in a dungeon and became handicapped. When he approached his brother for help, hoping to get a healer, he faced outright rejection from his own flesh and blood. His brother simply dismissed him, thinking he wouldn't be able to enter another dungeon. Yujin stepped away, accepting the painful reality of being a parasite clinging to his brother. Yet, he continued to survive in the dungeons, managing to do so despite being an F-ranker, all thanks to his unique skill. The skill he gained after awakening allowed him to influence anyone around him. All he needed to do was use a keyword, cheer up, and that would be enough to place someone under his influence. His basic skill could buff up the hunters, even if just a little, but there was more to it. The reason a parasite like him managed to survive even when everyone on his team was annihilated was not merely a fluke. It stemmed from a hidden skill that accompanied his Nurturer title. You see, this additional skill was named the Final Requital. As he continued digging and reflecting on all this, his hidden skill suddenly activated, granting him a significant stats boost. He dropped his instrument, wondering if something bad had happened. The effects of his hidden skill were straightforward. He could temporarily gain double the stats of those under his influence, and even utilize their skills and abilities at twice their original strength. To put it simply, if someone within his influence had a speed of 100, his hidden skill would grant him a speed of 200. This Final Requital was the skill he truly owed his life to. However, this seemingly powerful skill had a catch. It could only be activated when the subject under Yujin's influence died, which made him anxious. Considering it was just a D-ranked dungeon, he hadn't expected this skill to activate so soon. He moved toward where the team was fighting, finding blood spilled everywhere. Fear gripped him as he saw his boss in such a dire situation. Suddenly, he heard someone calling for help. Turning in the direction of the voice, he found a team member being devoured by a three-headed dragon. The very sight leaves him pulverized, as the creature before him is none other than the infamous poison and curse dragon king known as Rauktars. This dragon has been labeled as one incapable of being eradicated. He cannot help but wonder what a dragon of this caliber is doing in a D-ranked dungeon. The Dragon King Rauktars notices Yujin and charges toward him. In a panic, Yujin quickly activates his boss's D-rank skill, Leg Strengthening, to boost his speed and make a run for his life. Spotting some old ruins nearby, he decides to hide there and come up with a plan to escape. But before he can even reach them, the Calamity Dragon's tail slams into the ruins, reducing them to rubble. With nowhere left to hide, our handicapped hero desperately uses body strengthening on his arms, hoping he can somehow block the dragon's attack. But a single slam from the Dragon King Rauktar's sends him flying, knocking him aside like a rag doll. As he lies there, bleeding out, Yujin comes to the harsh realization that no matter what he does, he's no match for such a monstrous creature. His hidden skills effect kicks in, flooding him with memories from his boss. His boss had fought with all his might but couldn't even heal the wounds inflicted by the Calamity Dragon. Even the bully guy tried to buy some time for the boss, but the dragon crushed him like an insect. All these memories terrify Yujin, and he desperately tries to get up, but his injured legs refuse to respond. Panicking, he tightly shuts his eyes, convinced this is the end for him. Just when he thinks he's a goner, an explosion rocks the area, and he is saved by none other than his little brother, Yu-hyun. Dazed, our F-ranker asks why his brother came to save him, but Yu-hyun only tells him to stay back. Worried about his little brother, Yujin pleads with him to be cautious. In response, his little brother activates his blue willow leaves skill, launching into a stunning display of swordplay as he slashes at the dragon. He then covers his blade in dark, purplish flames and drives it into one of the dragon's heads, confidently declaring it the way an S-ranker fights. But, unfortunately for him, the dragon survives the blow and retaliates with a cursed, poisonous attack that not even a recovery potion can heal. Yu-hyun quickly activates a gigant shield to protect his brother, but in the process gets his sword broken. Our F-ranker starts to wonder if Yu-hyun is struggling because of him, feeling like he's holding him back. His thoughts are interrupted when his brother angrily asks why he entered the dungeon again, especially after already breaking his leg. His little brother scolds him, saying that he doesn't know his place and is constantly making him clean up his mess. This stings Yujin deeply, and in his frustration, he forces himself to stand, despite the pain, and speaks harshly, releasing the anger he's been holding in. Consumed by frustration, he asks his brother if he has grown sick of him, pulling out a sword in the heat of the moment. Yu-hyun shouts at him, demanding to know what he's doing, but our hero, consumed by madness, rushes towards the dragon and stabs it, provoking it. He drops the sword, telling his brother to just let him die so he won't be burdened anymore and won't even have to worry about his funeral. As the dragon prepares to attack, he asks his brother to stop caring, saying that everyone would be better off without him. In the final moment, Yu-hyun charges in, acting as a shield, taking the hit to save his brother. As Yu-hyun lies injured on top of him, Big Brother finds himself wondering where they went wrong to end up like this. Our F-ranker's mind drifts back to the day their parents passed away, remembering how, in those moments of loss, the two brothers only had each other and cared for one another more than anything else. Seeing his little brother on the brink of death, he shouts at him in desperation. With what little strength he has left, Yu-hyun tells our hero to listen carefully. He explains that the Dragon King goes into a deep slumber every 5 hours, and based on that, he only needs to survive for 1 more hour by hiding. Yujin, still in disbelief, struggles to understand what's happening. His mind races, recalling the pain of being neglected by his brother, who didn't even visit him in the hospital when he was injured. None of this makes sense to him, and he asks Yu-hyun why he's smiling at such a terrible moment. His little brother, still managing a faint smile, hands over a gate stone to his brother, urging him to use it to escape. But being a big brother, he refuses, insisting that Yu-hyun should be the one to use it instead. But with a quiet smile, Yu-hyun tells him that he wouldn't even be able to activate the stone in his current condition. With those final words, Yu-hyun breathes his last. In that tragic moment, the hidden skill of our hero gets activated. All of his little brother's powers and abilities get transferred to him twofold. Our F-ranker, now more powerful than the mightiest hunter, cradles his brother in his arms and carefully sets him down in a safe spot. He senses the power surging through his body and infuses a spear with dark purplish flames. Rising despite the pain, he strikes one of the dragon's heads. Asserting that he is twice as powerful compared to his brother, he effortlessly slashes off the dragon's neck as if it were merely a piece of cake. With the power of his brother coursing through him, our hero also inherits a flood of memories. He learns that Yu-hyun, despite his immense strength, had always kept a distance from him out of concern. The little brother worried that their bond might become a weakness, making him a target for those with ill intentions. He recalls the moment Yu-hyun instructed his employees to watch over him closely. When the F-ranker was injured, his brother felt a heavy burden of guilt, blaming himself for not being there to protect him. In a fit of rage, he confronted his staff, demanding that they take action against the bullies who had caused his brother pain. As our hero relentlessly attacks the dragon, memories of his brother flood his mind. He understands now that Yuhyun refrained from providing a healer not out of neglect, but to prevent him from stepping into another dungeon. Beneath his strong exterior, the little brother had always cared deeply for him, carrying the weight of guilt for not being able to protect him. With one final strike, the dragon falls, but as tears stream down his face, he grapples with the painful question of why his brother kept him in the dark. He awaits death as the moment for his hidden skill approaches its conclusion, knowing that a weakling like him cannot survive the poison gas. Before he succumbs to the poison gas, a system notification appears, announcing that he has achieved an impossible feat and earned the title of Dragon Slayer. He receives 10 gate stones, a crimson dragon sword, and a surprising wishing stone that can grant him a wish. At that moment, he considers resurrecting his little brother, but the system informs him it's impossible to bring back the dead. He dismisses thoughts of wishing for greater strength or glory, and remaining humble, decides to reverse time to before his brother's death. He vows to live a quiet life, ensuring he won't be a burden to anyone. A part of him fears regret, yet he resolves to follow through with his wish. He closes his eyes, and upon opening them, he discovers himself sitting on a couch. Realizing he is inside his brother's guild building, he attempts to open his status window but is unable to do so. He checks his phone and finds that he is 5 years in the past, wondering why he has ended up in this specific place. Suddenly, he recalls that this is the very day he visits the Awakening Broker. He goes there without realizing it is a scam, and consequently gets pulled into his brother's building. Just as the door opens, his brother enters and begins to scold him for engaging in foolish activities. Tears well up in our hero's eyes, and he rushes toward his brother, hugging him tightly. Relief washes over him at the sight of his brother alive, and he continually apologizes for feeling like a failure. Yuhyun questions whether his brother has landed himself in even greater trouble. Yujin denies this, explaining that he has come to understand what his brother has endured, and how challenging it has been for him to manage the dungeons and the guilds. He further promises Yuhyun that he will not cause him any more trouble. His brother hugs him back, expressing gratitude for sharing all of this. Our hero feels a wave of relief as he speaks from the heart, reminiscing about the bond they share. He declares his love and care for his little brother. However, just as he vows to forget everything about the hunter business, a system notification alerts him that he has awakened. This time he receives 2 titles, the Perfect Nurturer and the Dragon Slayer. He also acquires an additional skill called My Kid is the Best, which boosts his little brother's growth speed by a significant percentage. His little brother urges him to relax while he takes care of the cooking. Yujin recalls that before returning to the past, he had fought with his brother on this very day and run away. Now he feels happy that this time, not only have they reconciled, but they are also about to share dinner together. He opens his status window to review his stats, a moment of disbelief still lingering as he never imagined he would awaken again. As he examines his Dragon Slayer title, he wonders if it was granted because of his battle with the Dragon King, Rauktars. It feels strange to him, as the title should have been disregarded when he turned back time. Moreover, his title is ranked Legendary, which surpasses the usual S rank. As soon as he touches the title, 4 skills open up. It turns out that he has L rank resistance to poison, curse, and fear. The 4th skill, granted with the title, enhances his abilities against dragon-type monsters. He grows excited, speculating whether reversing time has somehow transformed him into the world's strongest. He envisions facing the Dragon of Calamity once more, imagining himself protecting his brother and his timeline like a hero, boasting that the poison would feel like a refreshing shower to him. Unable to contain his excitement, he eagerly checks his stats, expecting to see an upgrade to S or even L rank. However, when he finally looks, his hopes are crushed. Just like before, he is still stuck with an F-ranked body. Disappointed, he reviews his other skills, which remain unchanged from last time. But when he notices his Nurturer title, now upgraded to L rank, he quickly touches it and discovers 4 additional skills. The first skill is his old hidden ability, Final Gratitude, which he hopes he won't have to rely on. The rest of the skills are all having rather stupid and silly names. He checks the skill My Kid is the Best and discovers that, compared to before, it now doubles the growth rate of anyone under its influence. The third skill, My Kid is So Great, increases the stats of the person influenced, based on how many people he praises them in front of. Initially, he thought he had become the strongest, but now he's determined to make his brother and all the hunters in his guild the best in the world. He imagines himself wealthy once again, but this time as the nurturer of the guild. While lost in the splendor of his imagined life, his eyes catch sight of the keyword, I love you. Embarrassed, he smacks his head against the table. It seems that after reawakening, the keyword has also changed. He envisions using the keyword casually and eventually getting arrested for harassment. Feeling disheartened, he turns his attention to his final skill, Promising Growth. This skill enables him to assess the expected awakening rank of the unawakened, ensuring that those influenced would awaken with their full potential. Just as he becomes deeply engrossed in the possibilities, his brother presents him with the food. Yoo-jin thanks his brother for the meal and compliments him on creating such a delicious dish. Yoo-hyun, pleased by the praise, tells him to let him know if he needs more. Curious, our hero asks how his brother became such a skilled cook. Yoo-hyun explains that he developed these abilities while trying to survive. In his view, cooking one's own food is much safer, especially since he didn't have detox or antidote items back then, and there was always the risk of the food being poisoned. Yoo-hyun goes on to explain that during that time, he was working solo and had declared his intention to form his own guild, which led to many people opposing him. Our still F-ranked hero squishes his brother's face, scolding him for not sharing any of the struggles he had been going through. Yoo-hyun responds with a sad expression, saying he had his reasons. He explains that he kept an eye on him from afar and deliberately avoided him to prevent others from exploiting him, even though it meant their relationship suffered. Yoo-jin expresses that his brother should have shared his intentions, but Yoo-hyun counters, saying he didn't want to burden him and believed he wouldn't understand. He then admits he was wrong and tells Yoo-jin he loves him, even thanking him for being so understanding. Our hero, or more accurately, the hero who creates heroes, blushes. He feels overjoyed at having reversed time and considers it the best decision he's ever made. As Yoo-hyun remembers chores he needs to handle, he gets up to leave, but not before reminding his older brother to delete the contact for the awakening broker. He makes sure Yoo-jin deletes it and even double-checks before departing. Our F-ranker waves goodbye, mentioning that he will also be leaving soon. Leaning against the door, Yoo-hyun informs him that he can no longer leave the house. Yoo-jin feels confused and asks his brother to clarify what he means. Yoo-hyun explains that it is dangerous for him to leave the house. Our hero tries to reason with his brother, insisting that he has been living just fine on his own. However, his brother counters, arguing that the situation has changed. By getting closer to him, he has put his safety at risk, and now more enemies might target him again. Taking all of this into account, his brother suggests that he should live at his place. Feeling scared that he might lose all his ambitions, our hero rushes toward the gate. But before he can make a run for it, the house-moving department guy arrives to get his signature for the delivery. It turns out that his little brother has moved all his belongings to his place, leaving nothing behind. Yoo-jin asks for an explanation, and his brother states that since he has already expressed his love and apologized, that is essentially the same as giving him permission to live there. Therefore, he wants him to stay. As Yoo-hyun leaves, his brother lies on the floor, feeling frustrated and wondering if this is a side effect of reversing time. He quickly gets up, realizing he has no time to waste. Hastily, he packs his most important belongings, planning to slip away before his brother returns. Just as he opens the door, he finds a large man standing by the entrance, guarding it. It appears that his little brother has hired Kim Seong-han, an A-ranked hunter and the most skilled defense user in his guild, to look after him and prevent him from leaving. Our hero feels irritated that his brother has assigned him an A-ranked guard. He tries to negotiate with Kim, claiming he just wants to go for a short walk and will return, but the large man becomes angry. Kim's intimidating expression makes our F-ranker realize that nothing he says will convince him. The pressure from Kim's aura overwhelms Yoo-jin, but suddenly his fear resistance activates, calming him almost instantly. Instead of viewing Kim as a monster, our hero sees him as a docile, cute bear. Standing face to face with the big guy, he asserts that it is illegal to confine someone in this state, and warns that Kim might end up in jail for such an act. The big guy doesn't budge. He grabs our F-ranker by the shirt and asks if he needs a beating. Feeling powerless, Yoo-jin wonders how useless his skills truly are. As he gets thrown back into the room, he quickly analyzes his other skills, searching for something he can use. Suddenly, his promising sprout skill activates. He carefully observes Kim and realizes that he can potentially help him become an S rank. Imagining 2 S rankers, including his brother, in the World Edge Guild, he considers whether he could somehow awaken the big guy to S rank. He concludes that he will first need to influence Kim using the flirty keywords he has acquired. He thinks that if he can influence the big guy, he might gain his freedom. Summoning some courage, he tells Kim that he loves him, gesturing love symbols with his hands. However, Kim finds his actions repulsive and throws him back inside. Desperate, our F-ranker begs the system for his keyword to be changed. As the day passes, Yoo-hyun returns from work. He finds his brother lying on the floor and asks if he has rested well. Gently, he picks him up onto his lap and asks if he likes this place more than his old one. Noticing his brother's sense of defeat, Yoo-hyun tries to lift his spirits, promising that he will let him go soon. He explains that once their guild grows stronger, they will face no potential threats, and when that time comes, Yoo-jin can go wherever he wishes. Yoo-jin reflects on the realization that if he listens to his brother, it could take him several years to gain his freedom. His little brother insists that he will work hard to make this happen in a year. However, our F ranker knows it will realistically take 3 years for their guild to achieve this goal. Yujin envisions himself being taken for a walk like a dog. His face turns pale and gloomy as if his soul has left his body. Putting pressure on his brain, he suddenly comes up with an idea. Before returning to the past, he focused solely on researching hunters, which means he knows exactly which individuals are likely to awaken as high-ranked hunters. He plans to track them down and influence them in his own way. By making them sign a contract in exchange for his support, he could easily secure them as his escorts. He envisions himself as a mafia leader, surrounded by superheroes as his underlings. Feeling a surge of excitement, he quickly proposes to his brother that he will find him an A-ranked hunter. Kneeling on the floor, he declares that he will manage to find an A-ranked guard so he can move freely while staying safe. Yuhyun looks confused and suspicious, asking his brother if he is awakened and whether he possesses a skill that would assist him in finding higher-ranked hunters or awakening them. Yujin feels overwhelmed by a barrage of questions. He imagines being imprisoned for eternity by his overly cautious brother if he reveals the truth about having an L-ranked skill. Instead, he conceals that part and shares only the bare minimum, stating that he is merely an F rank. He adds that his skills are limited to helping him awaken just one person per month. He succeeds in convincing his brother, making him realize that Yujin won't be much of a target as an F ranker. His little brother explains that an awakening center is going to be established, which will serve as a substitute for his skill, assuring him that he has nothing to worry about. Yujin recalls such a facility being operational before he reversed time. Thus, he confidently declares his skill to be useless, all in an effort to gain his freedom. His brother advises him to remain vigilant, reminding him that it won't be an easy task. Our F ranker jumps for joy like a kid who just won a competition. He brags about his cunningness and envisions himself as a more prominent guild boss compared to his brother. The next day, Kim escorts him to the Korean Hunter Association for his registration as an awakener. The crowd stirs with excitement at the sight of Kim. When they see Yujin with the World's Edge shield, they speculate whether he is a hotshot or at least an A ranker. However, their excitement quickly turns to disappointment when they learn he is just an F ranker. After getting registered, our hero decides to acquire some equipment. He checks the budget his brother has provided and feels crushed upon seeing a figure with 9 zeros. He then visits the Hunter shopping mall, where he receives a warm welcome, likely due to Kim's presence. While they showcase a variety of equipment, he finds it overwhelming and requests something simpler. He finds a simple-looking pair of black fairy earrings and immediately decides to purchase them. He also picks up some leather gloves and a light fabric belt to further enhance his stats. Afterward, he checks his stats and finds them comparable to those of a C-ranked hunter. Once he finishes his shopping, he decides to buy some contracts and potions. Kim, waiting by the car, asks where he disappeared to. Irritated, our hero responds that he just went to the shopping mall, but the big guy warns him to inform him of his whereabouts so he can keep an eye on him. He asks our hero if he has any further business so they can return home, but Yujin replies that he wants to visit a specific place. He recalls that the Ice Witch, Park Yurim, lives nearby, along with a relative who runs a barbecue shop and acts as her guardian. He tries to remember more about her, noting that she awakened as an A ranker and would be a middle schooler by now. Determined, he takes Kim to the food market in search of her. As they stop by every barbecue restaurant, he inquires about her whereabouts. He treats himself to a piece of barbecued meat and asks Kim if he wants to eat something, but the big guy coldly refuses. Kim questions why they are in such a place when they can get higher quality barbecue at their own guild's location. Our hero excuses himself, stating that the cuisine here gives him an irresistible urge to eat in this very spot. As he enjoys the meat, a girl suddenly bursts out of a shop, shouting. It appears she is being scolded by her uncle for something she didn't even do. Just as she cries and runs off, our F ranker realizes that she is the very Park Yerim he has been searching for. He hands his food over to Kim and uses his belt, a B-ranked item, to swiftly chase after her. He moves through the crowd like a gust of wind, shouting for Yurim to stop. He informs her that he wants to speak with her for just a minute. The girl mistakes him for someone sent by her uncle. She calls him juicy, a term for a middle-aged man, and tells him she won't come back. Our hero playfully pretends to be offended by the comment about his age, but suddenly notices a car speeding toward the girl. Without hesitation, he rushes toward her, leaps, and fearlessly pulls her to safety just in time. The girl asks her savior if he is okay. Sitting on him, she inquires if he is some sort of hunter. Our hero, feeling the weight of the girl pressing down on him, asks her to get off first. Our boy takes the girl to get some food, hoping to have a talk with her. His mouth waters at the sight of the sizzling meat, and he encourages Yerim to eat as much as she wants. Yujin feels relieved that he brought the corporate card, especially since Yerim devours the food as if she has been starving for days. He tries to ask her about her uncle, suggesting she might prefer to eat at his place. The girl replies that the food there tastes awful and even advises him not to go, saying it would just be a waste of money. As Yerim munches on solid pepper, she asks our hero to get to the point, noting that the brother of such a top guild wouldn't have anything to do with someone like her. Yujin, feeling a bit sweaty, replies that he just senses good vibes from her. The girl takes him for someone from a dark cult and tells him she is not interested. She thanks him for the food and starts to leave. To stop her, our hero concocts a ridiculous story about how his parents helped him when he was in need, and he feels indebted to them. Surprisingly, the girl is easily convinced and pauses, admitting that most people backstab her all the time. Noticing her attentiveness, our hero finally gets to the point of this whole meeting. He reveals to her that he has an ability that allows him to help others awaken. He further adds that she will awaken as at least a B ranker, and since he has the backing of the World's Edge Guild, he will assist her in becoming an established hunter. Expressing his desire to become her sponsor, he extends his hand, inviting her to enter into a contract with him. Yujin hopes the girl accepts his offer and resolves to level up his performance. He takes a contract from his inventory and asks if she is interested in reading it. Yerim stands up in excitement, asking our F ranker if the thing he just opened is an inventory and how he got it. He tells her that she will also receive one upon awakening. He then hands her the contract, asking her to review and sign it. He explains the terms and conditions. All she would have to do is keep his skill a secret and take charge of protecting him for a year. Our F ranker gladly admits how weak he is, but Yerim mocks him, asking if he wouldn't be embarrassed knowing a middle schooler is protecting him. Yujin responds that once she awakens, she will be much more powerful compared to him, so there will be nothing to be embarrassed about. The girl makes a sad face, asking if she would become independent after awakening. Our F ranker nods his head, assuring her that all hunters are treated equally. Finding all her concerns answered, Yerim says she is going to sign the contract, but our F ranker immediately holds the pen, asking her to stop. He scolds her for not reviewing the contract carefully and questions what she would do if someone exploited her thoughtlessness. He shows her the contract thoroughly, emphasizing that it should be fair for her. He explains that she will also need a guardian if she is underage. Yerim becomes frustrated and argues that her guardian is the very person exploiting and extorting her. As she grows anxious, her uncle suddenly shows up, shouting at her for disappearing. Our F ranker stands up, trying to handle the situation peacefully, but the man ignores him, forcing the girl to go back with him. Yujin tightly holds his arm, asking him to stop. The man finally notices him, asking if he is in a relationship with her. Thanks to the items, Yujin grips him tightly, causing intense pain, and questions who he is to get involved with her. Our hero glances at the girl's worn-out clothes and shoes, and tells her that he understands why she would be better off without a guardian like him. Feeling supported for the first time, Yerim vents all her frustrations, explaining how evil her guardian is. She reveals that the man took all her parents' inheritance and didn't give her a cent. As she loudly and openly complains, people nearby begin to take notice, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. They start to argue that all this counts as abuse. This enrages the uncle. He lightly pushes our hero aside to approach the girl, but our hero, successfully putting on an act, dramatically falls down. Our frail little F ranker rolls around in pain, making a big scene about how the big bad uncle is beating him up for no reason. When the old man tries to defend himself, Yujin quickly wins everyone over, tears welling up as he claims he is just protecting Yerim. Yerim's uncle grabs our boy by the collar, but in a sneaky move, he knocks the old man off balance and sends him tumbling into some food. With a grin, my guy watches the old man slip on some soda, then slams his face into kimchi, giving his nose a fiery sting. Continuing his act, he bullies the old man. Yerim enjoys his play as our dragon slayer hovers his uncle's face over a grill and threatens him not to scam his niece ever again. But while he continues dishing out justice, a loud thud catches him off guard. As the two of them look around, trying to figure out where the sound came from, his bodyguard rushes in with a warning. A Cthulhu-like monster is outside, throwing the city into chaos after breaking out of a dungeon. The bodyguard quickly tells them to stay back while he uses his Tetra Shield skill to create a massive wall. Our hero wonders if there was such an event in his past life. Fulfilling his duty, the bodyguard leaps into the air and thrusts his heels into the monster, only to discover it is a swarm of multiple bodies. The tentacle begins to break down the wall, forcing everyone to run. Running in worn-out shoes, Yerim collapses. The monster's arms nearly grab her but are intercepted by our hero's shield. Yujin instructs her to rush to a shelter immediately. Seeing her frozen in place, he takes her hand and takes off. But Yerim looks dissatisfied. Once they finally reach the shelter, our dragon slayer tells her to stay while he goes to handle the tentacle monster. He recalls that he's seen these colony-type monsters before, which only fall if all their bodies are taken out at once. Noting that his bodyguard has only defensive skills, he racks his brain for a way to eliminate the threat. But as he is lost in thought, Yerim grabs his arm and begs him to awaken her abilities. But he replies that she has yet to sign her contract. She insists that she's made her mind up and will keep out of danger. But my guy tells her that she's just a kid. He gives her a reality check, that not everyone awakens with amazing powers right from the start. Haunted by his past mistakes, he's determined not to repeat them and takes off, reassuring her that he's got it covered. Leaving Yerim speechless, our Dragon Slayer draws on his 5 years as a hunter to hatch a plan. Thus, he calls out to his bodyguard and tells him to use his shield skill. Sunghan replies that it is useless even if he shielded a neighborhood. But my guy says that's exactly what he needs. So the two climb the wall and look down at the massive swarm. The bodyguard smashes his fist downward to completely enclose the beast in a giant shell, trapping it. Taking his cue, our Dragon Slayer leaps over the shield to find an opening. He remembers buying venomous A-rank pods for tough situations like this. Just as he prepares to throw one into the trap, he's stunned to find the area empty. Puzzled, he wonders where the monster escaped when suddenly, tentacles ambush him from behind. The monster grabs his ankle, emerging from underground and lifting our boy into the air. Upside down, our hero regrets not knowing that monsters can hide in sewers. Unsurprisingly, dungeons don't have those. But to his surprise, an umbrella-wielding lady comes to his rescue. Yerim distracts the monster, causing our hero to slip from its grasp. This time, she advises him to follow her down an alley. But our F-ranker starts lecturing her about risking her life as an ordinary human. Yerim, though, quickly reminds him of his own rank. When he tries to pull the age card, the sharp-tongued teenager teases him about wanting a little girl like her as his bodyguard. As they flee, he keeps up the lecture, but Yerim insists she must become awakened. She shares her happiness at having someone care for her safety, but also her frustration at feeling powerless to protect herself. She admits she wants to be strong, and not as helpless as she was in her childhood. Determined, the Ice Witch tells Yujin to believe in the potential he once spoke of. As this unfolds, the monster finally surrounds our duo. Out of choices, our nurturer grabs her arm tightly, causing a blinding flash of blue light to radiate throughout the city. Observing from a distance, Sunghan is puzzled. Out of nowhere, Yerim is seen freezing the tentacles with her skill Frosty Sigh. Seeing a panel reveal her S rank, she brightens up and shares her skills excitedly with our protagonist. As she's lost in her celebration, the tentacle monster ambushes her, latching onto her arm. Crying like a little girl, the S-rank hunter uses her brute strength to smash it into the wall. This raises her confidence. So she borrows Sunghan's black rod and thrusts it into the floor, giving rise to an icy projectile. Icicles fly towards our F-ranker, but he is swiftly saved by his bodyguard. Using the Sandals of Hermes, her second skill, Yerim flies through the colony of monsters, exploding them with a destructive attack. So my guy calls her out, warning her not to take them out as collateral damage. Regardless, our nurturer is delighted to see the girl known as the Ice Witch wear such a pure smile on her face. He praises her incredible awakening but can't help wishing she had a wide-area attack to wipe out the whole colony. Suddenly, a familiar voice answers his thoughts. With a vorpal flame in his hand, Yu-hyun unleashes a massive explosion. Yerim stares in shock as our overpowered little brother incinerates the tentacle monster entirely. Sitting on the ground, our boy feels relief as his brother arrives just in time to save him. But Yu-hyun gives him a look of disdain and immediately starts throttling him, ranting about how this is precisely why he locked our F-ranker up in the first place. Meanwhile, as Yerim withdraws from the fighting siblings, my guy introduces Yerim as his new S-rank guildmate. Yujin proudly brags that he has found an S-rank bodyguard, but his little brother questions if her parents consented. Scratching his chin, our guy tries to figure out how to explain the complicated situation and decides he'll just become her guardian. His little brother looks disturbed and suggests it might be better to be her sponsor. When he asks what the difference is, Sunghan explains that a sponsor doesn't get a choice in their custodian's private life, so they can't protect them from a horrible contract like a legal guardian who's like a parent. Hearing this, Yerim asks our hero not to go so far for her. But despite his little brother's judgment, he reminds her about her abusive uncle and gives her the final choice. However, Yu-hyun grabs him by the neck and mentions that he's seen many minors assault their powerless legal guardians. Half joking, he asks if our boy could handle an S-ranker if she started swinging. Offended, Yerim insists she'd never do that. Yu-hyun then passionately declares he'll become her guardian, only for Yerim to refuse on the spot. The two superpowered teens start squabbling until Yu-hyun drags our protagonist away. The Ice Witch, tightly gripping his arm, accidentally dislocates his shoulder. They both apologize, but our boy shrugs them off. Suddenly going on the offensive, our big brother asks if he raised Yu-hyun with such an attitude. He further adds that his little brother should be grateful that he found an S-rank hunter. He even tells him to fulfill his duty as a guildmaster and help out the nice Mr. Kim. Finally seeing Yujin free himself from his obsessive little brother, Yerim grumbles about her future guildmaster's bossy attitude. Not missing a beat, Yujin tells her to sit down obediently as well. Humbled, she apologizes and checks on his shoulder. He brushes it off, instead offering her his shoes. As he puts them on her, our hero notices her crappy uncle didn't even buy her the right size. Empathetically, he tells her they'll get her new shoes the next day. Feeling cheered up, Yerim jokes that she feels like a rom-com heroine from TV. In the spirit of the heroine role, she tries to swat a fly off his head, but ends up giving him a nosebleed. Our boy cries out, remarking she's far more like a villainess than a heroine. Then, switching the mood, he comments on how nosy he can be. Having been in her situation after his parents passed away, he expresses regret over not having someone to rely on. As he starts to explain himself, she instantly accepts his offer to be her guardian. After joking about the irony of being his bodyguard, Yerim smiles cheerfully as she fist bumps her new guardian. Then out of nowhere, after saying that he can't love her like her parents, our hero shoots an "I love you" at her, which is his keyword, of course. While the girl laughs at his weird quote, a panel confirms her under his custody. But to ruin the wholesome moment, her fat uncle barges in. He mentions how awfully he was worried about her safety. With the uncle not even hiding that he sees her only as a cash cow, our hero realizes he has one last problem to deal with. Deciding to entertain him, Yerim tells her uncle that she awakened as an S-ranker. Then she innocently adds that she's moving out since she signed a contract with our boy. This shocks her uncle, who says that she's merely 16 years old. She corrects that she's 15, and my guy clarifies that hunters are legally allowed to move out at 14. The old man snaps that he hasn't heard of such a ridiculous law, right before Yujin plays a recording of his abusive behavior. Yujin then blackmails him, hinting that CCTV footage can be used to press charges. The two start squabbling over who's unfit to be her guardian. Losing his cool, the uncle slaps at our boy's phone and grabs him by the collar. Tired of their antics, Yerim puts an end to it by smashing her umbrella into the ground. When the uncle warns her not to harm him, a civilian, she looks at him with puppy eyes. Instead, she begs her sweet uncle not to use violence. The old man starts yammering again, but quickly shuts up seeing his niece snap the metal rod into two. Making up her own story to beat him up, Yerim terrifies her uncle. The fat man wonders if she's still the little girl he knew, or a monster. The scene even makes our hero's fear-resistant skill activate. Finally venting her pent-up frustrations, Yerim confronts her uncle that she owes him nothing. She warns him that nothing can stop her from squishing him like a watermelon. Grabbing him by the shoulder, she tells him she's only letting him go because he's not worth her time or energy. She adds that he'll be trash forever, and threatens that if he ever harms our hero, she'll do worse than crush him like her umbrella. After they leave, Yerim cheerfully asks our boy if her evil Yujin impression is good. And with that, having found an S-rank bodyguard, he is finally free to leave the apartment. However, the next day, our sleeping hero doesn't get much rest, as Yoo-hyun bursts through the door, leaving him wondering what's so urgent. His little brother demands the items he bought on his shopping spree. Our protagonist is stunned. He thought he was free to spend as much as he wished. But Yoo-hyun clarifies he wants the A-rank venom pods. While our sleepy hero is confused about how his brother got wind of the item, a sentimental Yoo-hyun hugs him out of respect. Still leaving my guy dumbfounded, his emotional little brother thanks him for being ready to commit suicide if any enemies held him hostage. One final time, Yujin deeply thanks his big brother and promises to protect him with his life. On the other hand, our hero with legendary poison resistance is annoyed at not being able to clear dungeons with them. Not bothering to clear up the misunderstanding, our hero tells his little brother that he told Director Seok to take care of Yerim's uncle. He reveals that after digging some dirt on the fat man, they discovered he ate up all his niece's inheritance and burned through it with his crappy business. So they offered him a contract, promising not to sue him if he never contacted Yerim again. They even gave him some cash to convince the greedy moron. Yoo-hyun is surprised that Yerim doesn't want to sue him, so Yujin clarifies that she just wants to avoid him at all costs. He then confirms that she has been training hard all night to get used to her powers. In the training room, the boys are greeted by a pile of rubble. Out of nowhere, a massive pillar crashes down, narrowly missing our F-rank dragon slayer. Yoo-hyun smirks, reminding him about that confident claim of being able to handle an S-ranker. Acclimating to her new powers, the Ice Queen lands, shattering a punching bag. Yerim even tries out her Shadowless Day skill, which ends up paralyzing even our dragon slayer. She starts drawing in everything caught within her skill's range, only to smash it all again. While she proudly wipes her sweat off, a distressed voice surprises her. The girl finds her legal guardian knocked out in the arms of his brother. Worried, Yerim rushes over to ask if he's okay, but he asks who she is in his confusion. Yoo-hyun explains that they gave Yerim a new hairstyle for her visit to the Hunters Association. She chuckles, noting that she'll have to dress up if she's making TV appearances now. The newly revamped Ice Queen admits she was testing all her skills before logging them, and apologizes for not noticing our hero earlier. When he asks about the skill that got him, she mentions her first 2 skills, and a new one, Shadowless Day. The multi-target skill heavily debuffs the enemy, by literally absorbing their shadow. Additionally, it even buffs her own stats as she chooses. He pieces together that the skill must be absorbing power from everything around her, which explains the broken training gear. Then, she reveals a creepy ability, Pale Corpse, that allows her to interrogate the dead. Naturally, our guy reacts coolly to her creepy skill. He advises her to keep that ability under wraps and to leave some details out. So, they edit parts of Shadowless Day and her Sandals of Hermes skill. This makes her fawn over his wisdom, which only irritates his possessive little brother. Jealous, Yoo-hyun swoops in, claiming Yoojin learned all this just for him and not for her. And with that, the two start bickering like kids, both trying to get our hero's attention. Slightly concerned, our boy wonders if they'll ever get along. The scene cuts to the association building, packed with journalists. The Ice Queen makes her grand entrance, while our Dragon Slayer watches from afar, like a quiet guardian. His bodyguard, Sunghan, asks why he doesn't just go with her, recalling Yerim's earlier disappointment. But our overly modest hero brushes it off, saying that once Yerim experiences the S-rank celebrity life, she won't be missing him anymore. Regardless, he's genuinely happy to see her transform from a withdrawn Ice Queen into a joyful girl in this new life. He also confirms that the dungeon break was a deviation from his old timeline, raising concern about what other surprises could crop up in the new one. Shifting gears, he decides to focus on hunting for potential talents. Just when he's about to lose hope, he spots something remarkable. Without a second thought, he bolts off, leaving his bodyguard behind. He pushes through the crowd and grabs the arm of a fellow F-ranker with the potential to unlock a double S-rank skill, Myungwoo Yu. The F-ranker locks eyes on our boy as if trying to recall a familiar face. He casually chuckles, pretending they have a long history, and jokes that it's been so long that it's fine Woo doesn't remember. Meanwhile, he sneaks a glance at Woo's skill, noticing his mastery of the golden smithy. Light bulbs go off in his head, thinking of all the extravagant SS equipment he can hog, not even available in the future. He realizes that despite Woo being unaware, companies would rush to throw money at the seemingly ordinary and dull guy. He immediately starts asking questions, so the guy explains that he recently awakened and came to claim his subsidy. Our hero offers to train him, but he humbly denies, saying that no one would hire a broke F-ranker. So our big brother gladly offers him free training at his guild, annoying the introverted guy. So as his bodyguard drags him away, my guy promises to remember him. Sunghan stresses that the rules say only guild members can use the training room. Seeing the big guy, Woo can't help but wonder how Yoojin knows the famous Sunghan Kim of World's Edge Guild. So, my guy, dangling by his collar, happily shares that his little brother's the guild leader, blinding Woo with his blinding friendship aura. One last time, he offers the man free gear and a chance to train. Though Woo hesitates to accept the generous offer, our boy insists, saying he believes Woo's a good guy deep down. Surprisingly, Big Brother's persistent kindness gets to the man, who tears up and literally bows in gratitude on the streets. Later that day, our protagonist grabs Woo some vending machine coffee to calm down. The guy confesses that no one has been nice to him. Ever since childhood, he was highly talented at building stuff and won awards. But as he grew up, people told him crafting was pointless, pushing him toward studying instead. His life spiraled downhill, and his family, unable to support him, eventually kicked him out, piling up a mountain of debt. Deja vu hits our F-rank hero, who's dealt with his own share of discrimination due to his low power level and skills. He realizes that Woo's skills were never noticed in the past because studying was his only path. But this time he can change the double S blacksmith's fate. So my guy stands up and motivates him to stop thinking of others' criticism. Shouting some positivity mantras, he advises his F-rank fellow to do the same, while secretly sliding in an "I love you" at the end to add him to his custody. However, they soon face a new obstacle, Director Seok, the World's Edge Guild's HR manager. The director refuses free training for a stranger, especially one who might not contribute anything to the guild. He even mocks Woo, saying people would complain if they made an exception for someone who looks so broke and spineless. While the homeless guy's hope fades upon hearing all this, Yoojin vouches for his amazing skills. However, after complimenting his keen eye finding Yerim, the shitty director flips him off, saying that it was probably a fluke. The man then reminds us that our guy fell for the awakening scam mere days ago, and then used nepotism to get his way in the guild. Staying cool, my guy agrees with Director Seok's concerns but keeps pushing. However, having humiliated his new friend already, Woo bolts from the building out of embarrassment. Outside, our frustrated hero thinks about calling his little brother, but Woo assures him that it's okay, saying he's grateful for being valued by someone. He reveals his plan to give his passion another try, mentioning a place even willing to hire F-rankers. As they chat, a black SUV pulls up, carrying Woo's debt collector buddies. With that, our homeless friend thanks Yujin and bids him goodbye. The men happily welcome their friend and ask him about the subsidy he received. Of course, it isn't enough, so they take him along for a so-called job. When our boy calls them out for exploiting him, the gangsters ask him why he gives a crap. Sweating bullets, the F-rank Dragon Slayer says that he wants to come along. Now, stuffed together in the car, he asks Woo why he's in debt with such sketchy guys. The homeless guy explains that no bank would give him a loan. Instead, he asks why our hero would come along when he doesn't owe anything. So he answers that he can't leave his friend dragged away by a shady gang. Seeing that they are familiar, the fat gangster asks about their relationship. So before Woo can reveal that he is Yoo-hyun's brother, our guy shuts him up and says that they are childhood friends. He even adds that as a fellow F-ranker, he is looking forward to the job the guys are hiring for. So a bald guy with tattoos says that unlike big guilds, they let even F-rankers come along to mine. Acting all innocent, our boy gladly accepts. Our boy jokes that they turned out to be pretty nice guys, so they all have a good laugh before they coldly instruct him to sign a contract. Smiling on the surface, our hero recalls how the mining contract scammed years out of his life. With up to 80% of a miner's earnings taken as a protection fee, the raid team leaves miners alone to hack away. Sometimes stray monsters injure or even kill miners. He can't help but feel sorry for Woo, seeing his life being wasted and his potential ignored. The driver laughs, saying all they have to do is pick stuff up. Inwardly cursing these rascals, our boy keeps up a friendly face. Finally, they reach the guild building in Myanmar. Yujin loudly compliments the amazing guild name. As they climb up the stairs, our jolly hero is rudely kicked in the back. He gets up to see Woo also get beaten up. The bald guy apologizes to him but calls Yujin responsible for getting involved voluntarily. Our big brother holds his crying buddy in his arms, who repeatedly apologizes for getting him involved. But before he can console his weeping friend, our guy is dragged away to sign a contract. The boss man shows him the document, stating that he'll earn a generous 20% of his labor before fees since he doesn't have debt. To bind the contract, they reveal it carries a curse for breaking the terms. Without giving Woo a second to think, they press his fingerprint onto it. Seeing this, our guy asks the boss for a favor. He requests a chance to compare their contracts, bluntly saying his contract should be better since he owes them nothing. His audacity cracks them up, and they hand over the contracts, laughing. Reading it over, he notices Woo's contract only gives him 10%. The boss laughs, saying it'll help pay off his debt. Deeply disturbed, Yujin declares it a slave contract. He defiantly tears it up, vowing not to let them scam his friend. The gang looks on, stunned that he's not cursed. Having the curse instantaneously cancelled by his skill, our hero launches a swift kick into the boss's jaw. Seeing their leader fall, the gangsters panic, realizing they're facing someone powerful. With pride, our Dragon Slayer shares his rank, prompting them all to charge at him. But he calmly whips his phone out. Amused, the gangsters laugh that calling the police is useless. To their dismay, he was on call with his bodyguard for a solid 25 minutes. Suddenly, Sungun appears from behind my guy, tearing the wall open with his bare hands. The muscular bodyguard barges in and sends the fat gangster flying. Casually turning around, he tells Yujin it is time to leave. Meanwhile, his buddy Woo is lost in wonder how this happened. So he explains that he secretly speed-dialed Sunghan when he got into the car. From there, all he had to do was give directions, and Sunghan handled the rest. Meanwhile, Sunghan's busy dishing out some serious punishment to the gang. When a bald, tattooed guy tries to stab him from behind, Woo starts to panic. But the bald guy is the one sweating bullets when his knife simply bounces off Sunghan's steel abs. Sunghan mocks him, saying bringing a knife to an A-ranked fight is a big mistake, and then flicks him away like a pesky bug. One of the ruffians suddenly recognizes Sunghan as part of the World's Edge Guild and instantly orders everyone to kneel. When asked by Sunhan what to do with them, my guy reads their contract and decides on tit for tat. Suddenly, the paper in his hand begins emanating a golden light. He hands over the S-rank contract, shocking his bodyguard. He explains he made it a 50-year contract, and like the gang's boss, they'll only get to keep 10% of their profit since they owe him nothing. When the boss cries about it being a slave contract, Yujin just rains more contracts from his stash on him. Yujin sympathizes with all the F-rankers who probably lost a limb or two, but the boss laughs that they're responsible for signing their consent so easily. Our boy kicks his greedy flapper and berates them for not valuing life if it is of an F-rank. He tries to get it through their thick heads that F-rankers aren't just disposable tools. So he gives these cold-hearted jerks a taste of their own medicine with his contracts. As he's about to leave, the fat guy begs him to shorten their sentence. To show sympathy, our caring protagonist pats him on the head and tells him to sincerely atone for his crimes. Later that night, after handing the gang over to the association, Yujin and Sunghan head home, with Woo suddenly tearing up and thanking Yujin for saving him again and again. Thinking about the fortune he would make from the shy guy, our protagonist shrugs it off as nothing. But this doesn't stop the awkward guy from hugging our F-ranker while weeping loudly. Back at the guild, our hero also secures a dorm room using his swag as Yurim's guardian, and maybe physically obstructing the crew director from going home had a role in it too. He offers the room to Woo, but soon their next problem arises. Yujin asks his fellow F-ranker if can cook and clean since an outsider can't live with him unless they are a maid or housekeeper. He does reassure him that he doesn't have to do chores forever, and he can use this loophole until he's independent. Of course, this makes him emotional and brings the grown man to tears again. A few moments later, after putting him to sleep, our Dragon Slayer leaves to move his stuff from Yu-Hyun's apartment. But at his door, he is ambushed by a giant Sunghan, who informs him that he has something urgent to talk about. The two visit a bustling restaurant with a strangely pink vibe. When the waiter tries asking Sunghan how many people he is with, the giant simply replies with the name Minyi Kim. So the waiter bows, immediately shifting his tone, making onlookers wonder if they are gangsters. Arranging the best dishes on the menu, the waiter bows again before taking his leave. So our hero wonders why someone as old as his bodyguard would come here. Sunghan mentions that he took a recommendation from his fellow Minyi Kim for this good spot. With that, the man awkwardly tells our boy to enjoy himself, even as raunchy songs blare in the background. Yujin goes ahead and starts pouring his drink, but before he can say much, the man grabs the bottle to pour for him instead, suddenly apologizing as he does. Sunghan begins to open up, admitting that he initially saw our F-ranker as a nuisance to the guildmaster, but his view changed after witnessing Yujin's kindness and bravery. Recalling the dungeon break, his heroism in gaining Yerim's trust and saving her from her uncle, and his efforts for Woo, Sunghan expresses his deep respect for our hero. Our protagonist senses this is the perfect moment to force a quick "I love you" to Sunghan. The big guy cheers up instantly, clearly moved, while Yujin plays along, taking full advantage of the man's innocence. With a mischievous grin, our boy starts boasting about how he'd planned to take down the gang from the start. Sunghan warns him that it's too risky for an F-ranker, but Yujin just laughs, saying he can never be in real danger since his brother always has his back. On the topic of family, Sunghan shares his childhood growing up without parents. Raised by his grandfather, he reveals that his awakening came during an attempt to protect his grandpa in a dungeon break. Sunghan goes on to praise Yu-Hyun's family values, mentioning how the guildmaster allowed him to care for his grandfather, even hiring a healer for them. They continue to enjoy their conversation, and our boy decides to down an impressive number of shots, using his drunkenness as an excuse to use his keyword on Sunghan. Sunghan watches in shock, realizing he's finished a dozen bottles. He finally figures out that with his poison-resistant skill, he can probably never get high again. Panicking over the fact that he'll have to confess his love completely sober, he desperately mashes the skill, trying to turn it off. Finally it turns off, and the shot glass slips from his hand. With a flushed face, Sunghan watches as our Dragon Slayer collapses headfirst onto the table, unconscious. Hours later, Yujin wakes up with a splitting headache. He's frustrated about his skill failing him at the worst possible moment. Just then, he's stunned as Sunghan enters, bringing him a basin of water. Yujin springs up in bed, suddenly worried about why he's in Sunghan's room, especially since he confirmed he used his keyword on him. So as he looks suspiciously at his handsome, loving bodyguard, the man asks the most terrifying question one can hear on waking up. He asks if Yujin doesn't remember what happened the previous night. My guy instantly shouts that he's not into men. Ignoring him, Sunghan offers him herbal juice for his hangover. But then the big guy starts massaging his legs and even offers him a golden pot to poop in. Finally, Yujin can't take the strange behavior anymore and asks why Sunghan is acting so over-the-top caring. Sunghan then reminds him that, once he was dead drunk, our hero had something serious to share. According to the big guy, he stared Sunghan right in the eyes and said the golden words. But that wasn't all. He proceeded to repeat how much he loved his bodyguard dozens of times. This embarrassing story makes Yujin instantly prostrate in apology. But to his surprise, Sunghan confesses that it really means a lot to him. Apparently, Yujin's awkward drinking scene brought back memories of Sunghan's younger days, when he'd carry his dead drunk grandpa, who would also shout his love for Sunghan. Allowing him to relive those golden years, Sunghan thanks him once again. Hearing that he reminds Sunghan of his grandpa and nothing more, my guy is relieved. The giant continues that he felt like he was with his grandfather, so he wished to take care of Yujin to weird lengths. Promising not to be so weird again, the wholesome guy asks if he's allowed to drop by occasionally, just to check in. Hearing the heartfelt story, our nurturer has a sudden realization. His custodian ability seems to make hunters feel more like they're with a caretaker, rather than a friend or lover. This also explains why Woo is weirdly attached to him all the time. With that, he bids the big teddy bear goodbye. Woo, who seems scared of Sunghan for some reason, finally comes out of hiding. Just as this unfolds, Yerim bursts through the door, breaking it down. She congratulates Yujin on moving next to her, but her mood turns sour, seeing a homeless guy latched onto him. Meanwhile, our nurturer is deep in thought, wondering why he was given such a skill. A few days pass, and the three share an extravagant meal cooked by Woo. He says it's the least he can do for free accommodation, but the jealous Yerim complains he should do a lot more than cooking, while stuffing her mouth with the yummy grub. Shifting gears, Woo reveals that Sunghan, who has been visiting daily, is finally off on a raid. Yujin tells Yerim she'll be on TV when she starts raiding dungeons. As smug as ever, she jokes about making tons of money, only to buy a mansion and steal her guardian back from Woo. Yujin smiles wryly at the arguing duo. To their dismay, he reveals that they'll have to get along since they're going to a camp together. Hearing the doorbell ring, our boy makes his exit from the two fighting children. Director Seok appears in person to pick up the hunters due to an apparent change in schedule. So, our trio finds themselves facing a horde of demons, armed with nothing but a big black pole. Our hero, feeling scared, shouts that basic training involves taking on one monster at a time. Director Seok laughs, explaining that the more monsters they encounter, the quicker they can get used to it. Yujin finds this logic flawed, but the trio has no choice in the matter. Yerim takes off, urging them not to worry. Leaping onto the monsters, she unleashes freezing ice that burns them. She then stabs a dead monster with the black rod and presents it to our hero, asking if they could grill and feast on it. While the director admires the strength of an S-ranker, a lady approaches from behind, questioning whether it is appropriate for him to let newbies handle so many monsters at once. Adjusting his spectacles, the director tells her to relax, expressing more concern that Yujin and Woo might not get a chance to fight a single monster. Just as he mentions this, Yerim defeats all the monsters, stacking them in a Christmas tree shape. Suddenly, a monster, still alive in the stack, launches a surprise attack on the defenseless Woo. Our hero urges Woo to quickly aim the spear at the monster, but fear overwhelms him. In a panic, he throws the spear away and bolts, tears streaming down his face as he runs for his life. Just as the monster closes in on him, Yujin leaps forward, making a daring save. Afterward, Yujin scolds Woo for abandoning his weapon. He explains that the so-called monsters are just F-ranked tooth moles, known for their poor eyesight. He reassures Woo that since the creatures only run in straight lines, he could easily defeat them by simply thrusting the spear toward them. Director Seok carefully analyzes the battle and concludes that our hero is exceptionally experienced for someone who has just awakened. He wonders if anything is being hidden from them. While guarding Woo and reassuring him, the boy praises his fearless demeanor, stating it feels as if he has been an active hunter for years. This comment strikes a chord, making him question whether he has overdone it. To blend in, he tosses the spear aside, pretending to be scared as he lets the monster jump over him. The director, observing the spectacle, realizes he has misjudged the boy. Perhaps he isn't the hotshot he initially thought. As the test concludes, the trio steps outside. Woo appears gloomy, while Yerim is so excited that she seems ready for a second round. Woo apologizes to our hero for acting cowardly. Our hero reassures him, suggesting that combat might not be his forte. Yerim, feeling bold, boasts that she performed much better than Woo. However, our hero urges her to stop comparing and encourages them to get along. Director Seok then appears, congratulating the trio for successfully completing their basic training. He praises Yerim's outstanding performance while teasing the other two for their lackluster efforts. The director informs them that their theoretical education will commence the following day and introduces the lady standing beside him as their in-charge professor, Seok Hyeon. As she introduces herself, a spark of recognition flickers in Yujin's mind. He recalls that she is the young genius who traveled to America and uncovered the principles of dungeon formation. Suddenly he remembers her well-known alias, Dr. White, and accidentally blurts it out. This piques the lady's interest as she scrutinizes him, curious about how he knows that name, considering only a few people refer to her as such. The lovely Dr. White, Hyeon, remarks on the F-ranker's knowledge, to which he casually responds that he heard it from the HR team. This mention of the team triggers a thought in him. Noticing that both the director and Dr. White share the same surname leads him to conclude they must be related. The lady informs him that she is there for a research project and hints that their paths will cross again in the future. Meanwhile, Yoo-hyun and Kim have just emerged victorious from a fiery dungeon after slaying a formidable beast. As they survey the aftermath, they discover a baby monster lying near the fallen creature. Kim looks at the tiny creature and questions what they should do with it. Returning to our hero, he sits in a theoretical class, listening intently as the professor explains the origins of dungeons and the rise of guilds. She elaborates on concepts like dungeon breaks and dungeon shocks. As the historical information flashes on the screen, our F-ranker appears lost in thought, becoming sentimental over the stories of struggle and resilience. The professor then shifts her focus to the specifics of Awakeners, detailing how their ranks are determined based on various stats. Yujin finds her explanations engaging and her teaching methods effective. However, he notices some inaccuracies in the slides, recalling that skills can vary significantly depending on an individual's aptitude and environmental factors. Noticing our hero's keen interest, the professor approaches him, curious if he has spotted an error. She mentions that he shares the same discerning gaze as her major's professor, implying she can read his thoughts through his expression. I wish it was this easy to read someone's face. Our hero shares his thoughts, stating that skills don't need to be manifested only in dangerous situations, arguing that self-protection isn't the only trigger. He backs up his statements with relevant examples. Noticing the professor's confusion, he quickly suggests that she forget about the discussion. However, she takes his hands gently and tells him that she is moved by his imagination. Curiously, she asks him if he is working alone. In an effort to escape the attention of the professor, our hero turns to Yerim, urging her to ask a question. Yerim, catching on to the cue, plays along and inquires about the potential earnings of an S-ranker. The professor responds with enthusiasm, taking pride in the significance of the question. She reveals that the annual net worth of an S-ranker typically exceeds $10 million. She elaborates on this, highlighting the scarcity of S-rankers in the world. They not only serve to protect civilians, but also retrieve valuable items from dungeons, which include magic stones and occasionally even magic beasts. As the scene shifts, Yujin visits his brother, who has brought along a young magic beast from the dungeon. According to Yu Hyun, it is an infant horned fire lion, and he intends to tame it for use as a beast mount. The two siblings struggle to catch the beast, with Yu Hyun expressing frustration over his inability to tame the creature. He explains that he has attempted various methods, including using taming hunters and an owner's token, but nothing seems effective. Determined, Yu Hyun gives the token stone another chance. Just when it appears that the baby lion has finally been subdued, it unexpectedly leaps at him, preparing to attack. Yu Hyun pushes his brother back and uses his flames to intimidate the beast. Yujin urges his brother to stop, fearing he might burn the cub, but Yu Hyun reassures him that fire attacks are ineffective against this species. What ensues is a chaotic cat-scratch battle, and after much effort, Yu Hyun finally manages to catch the mischievous cub, though he is completely worn out. He tosses the cub into the garden to confine it. Breathing heavily, Yu Hyun expresses his intention to dispose of the creature. Yujin asks if he means to auction it off. Yu Hyun shakes his head, explaining that the cub would have to be killed, as it cannot be allowed to fall into dangerous hands. This thought saddens Yujin, who reflects on how perfect it would be if the cub could be tamed. Yujin checks the cub's stats and tries to recall if anyone in the future has a skill capable of taming such a monster. Suddenly, a system notification pops up, informing him that the cub hasn't been influenced by his keywords. This catches him off guard, as he had never intended to use his skills on monsters. His mind races with possibilities. If he can somehow manage to tame the cub, his brother could have a powerful mount. The thought of such an opportunity excites him. Turning to Yu Hyun, he casually asks if other guilds also have beast mounts, trying to gauge the rarity of such a creature. Yu Hyun mentions to him that, although a few of the monsters are indeed present, they are all low-ranked tamed ones. Hearing this, our hero becomes excited and eagerly seeks permission from his brother to handle the cub. He makes his brother understand the significance of having a magical beast as a companion, emphasizing how valuable it could be. He adds that, given the lion's fireproof nature, abandoning it would be a complete waste of potential. In his efforts to persuade his brother, he provides examples, all while imagining himself becoming wealthy as a successful tamer. His brother eventually asks the crucial question: how exactly he plans to accomplish such a feat. Yujin, with confidence, begins by discussing the cub's feeding regimen as the first step. He pulls out a kibble bowl and casually asks his brother what the monster cat enjoys eating. Yu Hyun, playing along, replies that the beast would likely prefer a meal of monster meat mixed with a C-ranked stone. At the mention of the C-ranked stone worth a staggering 10 million won, all of our hero's excitement dims like a flicker of fading hope. It becomes clear that what the monster craves isn't just a simple meal, but the equivalent of a man's blood, and his entire bank account thrown in for good measure. This is no joke, he recalls, remembering a caretaker once complaining about how much even a snow leopard can devour. As our worn-out hero offers the meal to the cat, his spirits suddenly lift when his brother casually mentions that he would be more than happy to cover the 10 billion won annually for it. Watching the cub eat, Our hero can't help but find it incredibly cute, causing him to blush. He starts to wonder if the cub can understand certain keywords, or if the meaning of his words might somehow get through to the little creature. For now, he chooses to leave that mystery unsolved and moves on to the next round, playing with the not-so-scary cub. He takes off his belt and starts a game of tug-of-war with the magical beast. Fortunately, having worked part-time at a veterinary clinic, he has enough experience to handle such situations. With a grin, he mentally dubs this game the tug-of-war of death. As fatigue starts to set in, he pulls out the tamer's token and presents it to the cub. Initially, the cub reacts angrily, but after sniffing the token, it suddenly calms down. To add to his surprise, a system notification appears, informing our F-ranker that his title also amplifies the token's power. The once ferocious cub stops acting like a monster and warmly hugs Yujin. However, when Yu-hyun steps closer, the cub swiftly bites his hand without hesitation. Our hero scolds the cub for biting, speaking to it as if he were its mother. Yu-hyun, being S-ranked, isn't injured, and feels relieved that the cub isn't aggressive towards his brother. In fact, he even agrees to let him raise it. This sends our hero drifting back into his daydreams, where he imagines himself as the great-grandma of numerous magical beasts, earning the nickname the Magic Beast Tamer. Yujin assures his brother that he will take the cub after making the necessary preparations. His brother then asks if he won't raise it here. Our hero responds, explaining that the dorm is spacious enough, and he also has Yerim and Woo by his side there to help. This makes his little brother grow sentimental, not wanting Yujin to leave him. Our F-ranker recalls Kim's advice about his brother and gently pats Yu-hyun's head. He tries to comfort him, explaining that he isn't moving out completely and will be using both places. Yujin reassures him that as soon as his newbie training is over, they'll have plenty of time to hang out together. Yujin then asks if Yu-hyun is free in the evening. Yu-hyun responds that he'll make time but wonders why. Yujin tells him he wants to have a drink together, reminiscing that if the world were still the same as before, they would probably be enjoying a drink during the holidays without a second thought. Yu-hyun blushes and agrees to the proposal, bringing a subtle warmth to the moment. Now, our hero steps into the next phase, pondering over what he should name the monster. After a brief blush, he decides on the name Peace, believing it should symbolize world peace. Soon after, the nursery trio is set to enter the dungeon once more, but this time they are joined by Yu-hyun. Yerim, visibly upset, questions him angrily, asking why he's tagging along this time. It seems that Yu-hyun just can't allow his brother to venture into a potentially dangerous place alone, which is why he's tagging along. Yujin feels a bit embarrassed by this, finding his brother's overprotectiveness completely weird and a little overwhelming. The crowd buzzes with excitement as they snap pictures of Yu-hyun standing alongside Yerim. During an interview, their little guildmaster explains that he wants to guide the new S-ranker, fulfilling his role as both a senior and a guildmaster. Meanwhile, our hero keeps his distance from the cameras, observing how his brother skillfully promotes his public image. He finds the situation fascinating, considering that both S-rankers possess opposing attributes, making them an ideal combination. As he watches, he wonders when Kim will awaken as an S-ranker, placing a hand on Woo's shoulder and hoping that he can create some impressive equipment soon enough. As the time to enter the dungeon approaches, the new crew is excited to rent some equipment for free. Woo eagerly examines the items but is taken aback when the weapon in charge informs him that he would have to pay for any damages he might cause. Knowing that Woo will create much better equipment in the future, our hero reassures him by handing over a high-ranked piece of gear and telling him not to worry. While scanning the shelves, our F-ranker spots some potions and curiously asks if they are free as well. He learns that the potions are only free for guild members, so he asks Yerim to grab some extras and share them with him. After picking out the potions, Yerim stumbles upon a nasty-looking weapon and inquires whether she can use it. Yujin advises her to ditch the axe in favor of something more suited to her frame. Meanwhile, Yu-hyun remains occupied with interviews, speaking highly of his guild and its members. Eventually, he approaches his brother, apologizing for any delays. He explains that the gate leads to a D-ranked dungeon and warns that once they enter, the gate will close, leaving them with only two options: defeat the boss or face annihilation. He even presents them with a gate stone, a rare item that could be used in emergencies. Our hero reflects on how just yesterday he was regarded as trash, but now his life has taken a remarkable turn. Feeling a surge of happiness, he realizes that this time he is entering the dungeon proudly, accompanied by his brother and the people who truly care for him. As he steps through the gate, he vows to prevent the future he once faced from ever becoming a reality. Yet, it seems that life still has many challenges in store for him. As they enter the dungeon, Yerim's excitement is palpable. She exclaims that it feels like stepping into a whole different world. Yu-hyun, however, chides her to stop acting as if she's on a field trip and, to emphasize his point, burns the grass in front of him. Yerim, clearly frustrated, questions his logic for scorching the surroundings. She then launches into a lecture about environmentalism. Yoo-hyun calmly responds, explaining that things are different in this place. He points out a monster lurking nearby, reminding her that the first priority when entering a dungeon is to ensure her own safety. He explains that the strongest person must always take the lead and clean up the mess for others. With a teasing tone, he questions whether she had been sleeping during her lectures. Yerim, with a hint of defiance, insists that she attended all of them, quickly adding that she doesn't have an AoE skill to help her. Yujin encourages her, assuring her that she will receive a skill once she levels up. He explains that if she keeps grinding monsters, she'll reach level 10 before she knows it. However, he also mentions that no one can predict what skill one might obtain. Just then, his system panel pops up, offering him the option to select which skill he wants to choose for her. He searches for the Pale Rain skill, recalling that it was the signature AoE skill of the Ice Witch before he came back in time. Applying the growth focus on a single skill for Yerim, he confidently tells her that he has a hunch she will learn an AoE skill once she levels up. Yoo-hyun, standing beside her, informs Yerim that leveling up isn't as easy for her, noting that S-rankers require a massive amount of experience points to level up compared to lower-ranked individuals. He then loudly points at her, reminding her to take care of herself, emphasizing that he is specifically there to guard his brother. Yujin chimes in, asking Yoo-hyun to tone it down a bit. But despite his intervention, the two S-rankers continue to bicker, their friendly rivalry adding a layer of tension to the moment. Annoyed by their constant bickering, Yujin pulls their cheeks and demands that they stop at once. He questions their purpose for entering the dungeon and tells them to focus on the mission rather than picking fights with each other. He advises them to behave nicely, just as they did during the interview. Reluctantly, the two patch things up for the sake of our hero, shaking hands with each other. Our F-ranker urges them to stay vigilant and reminds them that if they help him and Woo level up, they can also learn some new skills in the process. Upon hearing this, Yerim and Yoo-hyun dash toward the monsters, vowing to bring them down for Yujin so he can easily finish them off. As they both attack simultaneously with their opposing attributes, an explosive clash ensues, lighting up the dungeon with a brilliant display. The scene then shifts to a strange place where the inhabitants seem aware of our hero and his ability to reverse time. One of them urgently instructs another to locate him quickly, noting that he has entered a dungeon. It becomes clear that the only opportunity they have to contact our hero is when he ventures into a dungeon, making this moment crucial for their plans. As the scene shifts back to the peaceful-looking dungeon, Yerim is seen charging forward, freezing everything in her path. Meanwhile, our little brother is busy incinerating the monsters, competing with her to assist Yujin. The two competitors pile up the half-dead, half-alive monsters. Our hero quickly leaps into action with his spear, handing one over to Woo so that he can also gain some experience. As they shake hands, Woo wonders if he too could acquire a good skill upon leveling up. Our hero reassures him, urging him to stop worrying and affirming that he will definitely receive one. However, as he checks Woo's status, he discovers another condition required for the skill. He quickly peeks at the system and zones out, noticing that it requires Woo to sharpen 10,000 tools. Unbelievably, a typo appears, leaving our hero feeling perplexed and wondering if these tasks are being manually written. Before long, Woo reaches level 10. The poor soul bows down in disappointment, realizing he hasn't received anything for his efforts. Meanwhile, Yujin remains preoccupied with the bizarre typo. While the people of this world consider the new system a miracle from God, the recent glitch makes him question whether another creature might be behind it. Yoo-hyun and the Ice Witch approach our hero, asking if he has finished and reached level 10. Yujin responds that Woo is all set, but he himself still needs a little more experience. All of a sudden, a strange panel pops up, declaring, "Found you." Startled, our hero wonders what it is, but before he can grasp the situation, the two S-rankers rush toward him, shouting for him to watch out. The Ice Witch, Yerim, quickly springs into action, protecting them from the flames surging toward them. Our F-ranker, confused, asks what is happening. Yerim explains that a boss monster has appeared. What is unusual about this situation is that bosses in D-ranked dungeons typically do not use such powerful AoE attacks. Yerim continues, mentioning that there was a giant goat monster boss, but suddenly a bird-type monster emerged and killed it. She shouts in panic, questioning what they should do and why the gate hasn't opened even after the cow boss monster has been annihilated. Yoo-hyun proposes that it is possible the birdie has been registered as a substitute boss, suggesting that they cannot escape until they defeat it. Worried, Yoo-hyun admits that he has never encountered such a beast before. He hands his big brother a gate stone, advising him to use it to escape if things take a turn for the worse. Our hero spaces out, feeling scared at the thought of a repeat of last time. However, he ultimately rejects the gatestone, confidently assuring his brother that the monster stands no chance against him. He analyzes the beast, noting that its name is Golden Beak Maya, and that it is an A-ranked fire attribute dungeon boss. He further informs Yu-hyun that the skull is the weakest part of the Golden Beak Maya, explaining that destroying its wings won't be effective since it possesses an extra pair. Yu-hyun asks his brother how he obtained all this intel. Our F-ranker replies that he will fill him in once they escape. Determined to get out together alive, he instructs Yurim to create a shield made of ice. As the icy barrier takes shape, he tells his brother to go all out, readying themselves for the imminent battle. Yu-hyun insists on handing the gatestone over to his brother before jumping into action. Yerim questions whether she might have been a better option since she possesses a flight skill, but Yujin counters that she would only end up getting burned. Yujin is aware that not only does his brother have fire resistance, but he also possesses a skill akin to flight. Meanwhile, Yu-hyun waits for the monster to descend and instantly slashes at one of its wings. Our F-ranker shouts at him, urging him not to aim there, reminding him that the monster has spare wings. The birdie flies up once more and launches an attack. Our hero feels confused, wondering why his brother is waiting on the ground when he could easily jump up and finish it off. He fears that he may have misjudged the situation, and that his brother hasn't yet learned his Blue Willow skill. Suddenly, the birdie targets our hero and the Ice Witch, prompting Yurim to panic as she worries about what she should do if her shield fails to hold up against the impending attack. As the monster quickly approaches them, Yu-hyun swiftly uses his Blue Willow skill against it. Our hero calms down at the sight, but as he observes how his brother is employing the skill, he shouts, telling him that he isn't supposed to use that attack in that manner. He urges Yu-hyun to jump on the leaves. At first, Yu-hyun is reluctant, but once he steps onto the leaves, he quickly gets the hang of it. The birdie engulfs our little brother in flames, but such weak flames stand no chance against him. With determination, Yu-hyun wields his blade and delivers the finishing blow to the monster. As he lands, our hero rushes toward him, asking if he is hurt. The little brother, filled with excitement, asks how he knew that the leaves could be used instead of flight. He expresses his gratitude, saying that all he was missing was a flight skill. But now he has resolved his problem. With the defeat of the birdie, the gate appears, and the four of them return to Earth. Upon their return, the guild members notice their guildmaster in disarray and become concerned, asking what happened. Yu-hyun explains that an A-ranked boss appeared and that they should report to the association. Meanwhile, our hero skillfully maintains his distance, trying to stay hidden from view. All of a sudden, Kim is seen running toward him. He jumps and grabs Yujin's feet, asking if he is all right. This action catches everyone's attention. Meanwhile, Kim worries about whether he will remain useless. Once they reach home, Yujin goes to check on his monster pet. Peace jumps on him, and the two play together a lot. Yujin wonders if this interaction is enough to influence the little guy. As he lays on the floor, completely worn out, our hero reflects on all the strange events that occurred throughout the day. What bothers him the most is that these strange occurrences began in the future, leaving him questioning why they are happening already. He feels a surge of fear, wondering if all these mishaps are a direct result of him reversing time. Initially, he blames himself, but then he shifts all the blame to the system for failing to inform him about any consequences. He finds the system to be unfair, and just as he opens up the panel, a strange book appears in front of him. It turns out that creatures from another dimension have sent him a roll book. Observing its fancy design, our hero wonders if it was made by a kindergartner or something similar. He learns that only S-ranked influenced subjects are listed in the book. It appears that the system wants him to influence 50 S-rankers. Meanwhile, Yu-hyun comes out, asking his brother if he is doing all right. As the scene shifts, Peace is training against the rat monsters, having grown twice his size in just 2 days. Our hero, recording his pet's progress, is properly equipped with armor. When Peace tackles him, his armor protects him this time. Just the night before, when his brother had asked what skill he received at level 10, our hero had told him he gained a taming skill. To hide his own skill, he makes an excuse, stating that it is an S-ranked skill, allowing him to tame high-ranked beasts. Upon learning it's an S-ranked skill, Yu-hyun prepares to imprison him again. Yujin suggests they should use the skill to their advantage instead of hiding it. He proposes that he will not only raise the horned lion but also several other beasts. If all the higher rankers in the World's Edge Guild receive high-ranking beasts, the dynamics of dungeon clearing would drastically change. Now back to the present. Our hero feels fortunate that the lion cub has finally been influenced. Since his system wants him to influence 50 S-rankers, he wonders if influencing monsters might be a better option. Feeling tired after training his pet lion, he lays down, but Peace still seems to be bursting with energy. Suddenly, Director Seok appears, clapping his hands. He praises our hero for training right after his practical is over. Director Seok praises our hero and bows down, apologizing for having been disrespectful toward him. He then clings to him, begging him to join the World's Edge Guild. This behavior irritates our F-ranker, who tries to ward him off. He remembers how mortified he felt in his future every time he encountered this guy. The poor director does everything he can to convince our hero. Suddenly, our hero recalls that things could unfold differently now that Seok doesn't remember his past in this life. Taking on a superior tone, he states that it doesn't matter to him since his brother will cover all the expenses anyway. The director gets excited and quickly prepares the contract. Our hero adds his condition that he will be registering as a regular employee instead of a hunter. He explains that he plans to remain unaffiliated as a hunter so he can raise beast mounts for other guilds and earn a substantial amount of money. He continues, stating that he intends to become a golden egg among high-ranking hunters. If the World's Edge Guild tries to make his skill exclusive to them, he warns, other guilds could come after him and might resort to poisoning his food or employing any means necessary. He further adds that it would be better for a golden egg-producing hen like him to remain unaffiliated to anyone. He cunningly states that in this way, he can raise pets for each guild while ensuring his own safety in return. He asks the director to handle the negotiations with the other guilds. Director Seok initially remains speechless but eventually smiles, admitting that he simply cannot outsmart our hero's scheming. He then asks if he can record a video for the negotiation process. While preparing for the shoot, the director inquires if our hero would reconsider joining them once the World's Edge Guild becomes the strongest. Yujin bluffs, making it seem like he might agree, but he quickly asks the director if he is recording this part. Our hero then counters by questioning what benefit the guild would gain from recruiting him since he is already assisting them. As the director leaves, he smiles, realizing that our hero still lacks self-awareness. Meanwhile, our hero is rolling on the floor with his pet, feeling happy about receiving a good salary and social insurance. The director thinks that high-ranking individuals often become oblivious to their surroundings, but unlike them, our hero seems to have an air of arrogance. He calmly predicts the outcome of situations and even knows how to manage negotiations effectively. He wonders if the kid was always this talented and if he had failed to recognize it, blinded by the brilliance of his brother's powers. Touching his spectacles, he considers that while the guild was prepared to face some risks, if Han Yujin remains unaffiliated, everyone will target him, leaving the guild unscathed. He ponders whether our hero is unaware of the risks he faces or if he knows them and is trying to protect his little brother from danger. As the director publishes the video, it quickly goes viral, reaching the guild masters of the 3 top Korean guilds. They plan to visit the World's Edge Guild after seeing it, hoping to determine whether our hero is the real deal or just a bluff. As the scene shifts, our hero has finally finished building Peace's pen. He asks Peace if it likes the new space, hoping it won't become too small for the cub as it grows. Yerim and Woo arrive, referring to the little monster as a cat. Suddenly, Yoo Hyun appears, urgency written all over his face, and asks his brother if he has a minute. He informs Yujin that the guildmasters are coming to see him. While walking toward the meeting room, Yoo Hyun mentions that Yujin can refuse the meeting if he wants, but Yujin insists that he wouldn't do that. Yoo Hyun argues that low rankers typically don't encounter S rankers and insists that he would simply ask them to leave. However, Yujin reassures him not to worry and forbids him from using any words that could support his argument, such as but or even so. As the two enter the meeting room, all the guild masters are already present. The atmosphere feels tense, activating our hero's fear resistance. A man in a purple 3-piece suit asks Yujin to show him his hand, stating that he would like to appraise him. Yujin is just about to extend his hand when he suddenly remembers that he cannot let something like that happen. He quickly pulls his hand back, arguing that he can't carelessly expose himself like that. He imagines how his brother would tie him up once his L and S rank skills were revealed. Luckily, the cub jumps on the appraiser, becoming violent. Our hero rushes to calm Peace down. The Hunter Association president and the Hanshin guildmaster begin to argue about whether the cub acted this way because it sensed the skill being used. Observing the commotion, the Breaker guildmaster, Moon Hyuna, states that the beast's behavior is proof enough, rendering the appraisal unnecessary. She then presents our hero with a chair to sit on. As he looks at her towering stature, our F-ranker wonders if Yerim will also grow taller than him. The giant lady asks Yoo Hyun if he can find another horned lion for her. Our little brother responds that he would, but in exchange for a top-tier beast mount with cold resistance. She quickly catches on, teasing him that he definitely wants it for Yerim and calling him greedy. The MKC guildmaster, Choi Seokwon, complains that the World Edge Guild has already monopolized all the beast mounts on the market. Yoo Hyun, irritated, tells him that he will wait until Choi gets one from the dungeon. This infuriates Choi, who slams his fist on the table and stands up, claiming that Yujin is fooling them all. He states that it is obvious Yujin is unaffiliated with his brother's guild only in name. Lady Moon tells Choi to calm down, but our hero stands firm for himself. Rising from his seat, he declares that his relationship with his brother's guild is merely a partnership, as he cannot handle all the expenses alone. He states that if he had intended to side with his brother's guild, he would never have come here. He further adds that considering his own limits, he would be able to raise at least one beast for everyone in the room. Despite his efforts to convince Choi, it becomes clear that Choi is not someone who can be easily swayed. Meanwhile, Hyuna praises our hero for his excellent negotiation skills, even inviting him to join her own breaker guild. Noticing his brother looking ragged at a distance, our hero quickly shouts that he is not even considering a premium sale. He clarifies that he wouldn't join any guild unless his brother invites him after his guild becomes the best in the country. Hearing this, the Jupiter Guild leader, Sung Hyunjae, argues that they are already the best in the country. Our hero swiftly counters that his previous offer was exclusive to his brother. For any other guilds, they would have to be at least the best in the world for him to consider their proposal. Lady Moon pats our hero hard on the back, calling him confident for his size. Observing his obstinacy, she comments that he truly is the brother of Yoo Hyun. In that moment, our hero feels like a small insect among a pool of whales. Had it not been for his fear resistance, he would have been overwhelmed long ago. He pities his brother for having dealt with these formidable figures until now. Park also praises our hero, arguing that he is much more docile compared to his brother. Yoo Hyun interjects, saying that he cannot agree because, in his opinion, his brother is probably the most docile person in the whole room. Everyone makes strange faces at our F-ranker, making him feel awkward. To clarify his earlier statement, our hero begins recounting a heartfelt story. He explains how his brother has always been an irreplaceable little brother to him, one who consistently cared for him even when he was very young. He shares that Yoo Hyun worked hard to get into medical school, promising to earn a lot of money for both of them. He adds that, despite his best intentions, he could never provide enough time for his brother, especially after their parents' death when he had to take on work responsibilities. Yet throughout it all, his little brother never troubled him. As he shares this story, laughter erupts among the group. They jest that his presence clearly explains why his younger brother stands so politely today. Yujin feels a surge of anger towards the guildmasters and questions the lady about whether she is harassing his brother simply because of his youth. The association leader and Park struggle to contain their laughter at the scene unfolding before them. As the contract is handed to him, Yujin snatches it away with a rude gesture, perplexed by the way everyone is treating his brother. Lady Moon explains that the guildmasters had reached an agreement prior to the kid's arrival. She suggests that Yujin take a moment to read the contract and let them know if he needs any adjustments. While reading, our hero discovers that he is set to receive a building with safety guaranteed by all the guilds involved. Lady Moon, puzzled by his reaction, asks if Director Seok hadn't mentioned any of this to him. The association leader clarifies that the director specifically requested a building in Yujin's name, recognizing that he would need a place to raise monsters. As our hero reviews the entire contract, he finds himself growing increasingly anxious when he reaches the part requiring his signature. He never imagined he would become the owner of an entire building in the heart of Seoul. The excitement overwhelms him, and he gets lost in thoughts about how his new property will be protected by the top 5 guilds in the country. He even starts to plan how he can set up an equipment workshop for Wu, and wonders if he could persuade Hyeon to conduct her research there instead of traveling all the way to America. He imagines himself being interviewed about his success story, which showcases his sudden rise from a construction laborer to a millionaire landlord. Not only does he envision this, but he also plans his retirement by renting out the building. As F-ranker returns to his consciousness, the guildmasters are already leaving. Guildmaster Sung informs him that the offer will remain available if he considers reconsidering. With the meeting coming to an abrupt end, the two brothers engage in light conversation. Yoo Hyun encourages his big brother to disregard what others think of him. Our hero hugs his cub for exhibiting such commendable behavior. As the scene shifts, our hero is served a feast by Wu. Yujin loves the food and enjoys every bite. He inquires if Wu doesn't have much luggage and encourages him to get ready for moving out. Wu becomes worried, fearing that he is going to be kicked out, and collapses on the floor, crying. He expresses that he always knew he would end up like this, feeling useless all along. Our F-ranker attempts to comfort him by stating that they are both F-ranked, but Wu takes this personally, asserting that even so, they are on entirely different levels. Yujin attempts to comfort Wu, but Wu wipes his tears and thanks our hero for all his favors, stating that he will prepare to leave. At this moment, Yujin realizes what has just transpired. He tells Wu that there has been a misunderstanding and insists that he is not useless. He even reassures Wu that he will soon acquire a good skill. Finally, our F-ranker feigns giving up the argument, claiming that he cannot force Wu to be on his side. He engages Wu in wordplay, stating that he has just learned information that would be extremely useful, but since Wu is leaving, he won't be able to share it. Wu falls for the bait and insists on knowing the information. Our hero concocts a story, claiming that he has learned from Dr. White that there is a specific training that might enable Wu to receive a special skill. Meanwhile, Dr. White, Hyan, is busy conducting her research in the shadows during the night. She has just completed her work, hoping to uncover some answers. The scene shifts back to our F-ranker, who has purchased a ton of knives for Wu. He informs Wu that he cannot share anything he has learned from him, not even with Dr. Hyan. Wu feels confused when he realizes he will be sharpening a bunch of kitchen knives. As Wu sharpens one of the knives, our hero checks his status and notices the number has increased by 1. He then tries to motivate Wu, telling him that he will gain an amazing weapon-related skill if he sharpens 10,000 of these knives. Wu blushes, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. Our hero had thought it would take him a year to complete this task, but in his excitement, Wu claims he will finish in 100 days by sharpening 100 knives each day. He promises to repay our hero's kindness when he can. Little does Wu know that for Yujin, he is merely retirement asset number 2. After this, our hero visits Dr. White's lab. Hyan seems delighted to speak with our F-ranker and engages him in conversation for hours. She explains that, according to research, mass dungeons are unpredictable, and not many people venture into researching them for this very reason. Our hero, trying to keep up, points out that they should be lacking in data, considering there are only a few dungeons in the country. Dr. White agrees, replying that this is due to their country being quite small. She adds that she would be able to compile some statistics if she could investigate more dungeons, and according to her, the only way to do so is to join an overseas team. This triggers a memory for our hero, making him realize that this was the reason she plans to leave for America. For the past 3 years, she has been discovering the principles of dungeons, and America would benefit from her findings. He wonders if there is a way to make her stay. Hyan then retrieves some buckwheat jelly and places it near the window, explaining that Dokebi likes it on the last night of the lunar month. Curious, our hero inquires about this mysterious figure she speaks of. Hyan tells him that Dokebi is a mythical teleporting hunter, and as the name suggests, this particular hunter wears Dokebi attire. Dr. White further explains that neither their name nor their gender is known to people, which is why the pronoun them is used. The only information available is that they can teleport and have been using their skills to save people from dungeon breaks and various natural disasters. No matter the difficult circumstances, Dokebi has always been successful in dealing with gangsters. Their skills make them hard to catch, and they have never offended anyone in the world. Because they help everyone while remaining unaffiliated, everyone loves them. Learning how to call them on the internet, Dr. White hopes that Dokebi will come and share information about all the dungeons in the country. As she sprinkles the buckwheat, our hero starts to think of her as a bit mad. He questions whether this legend is even true to begin with, and suggests that she should get information from his brother's guild instead. Suddenly a blackout occurs. Our hero quickly takes out his device to turn on the torch. When he calls out to Dr. White, he finds her petrified, as if she has seen a ghost. She screams and faints. Our hero picks her up and feels a surge of fear when he sees a real ghost. His fear resistance kicks in, instantly calming him down. He wonders if it is Dokebi playing tricks and calls out their name. Hearing this, a Dokebi appears in front of him. The figure resembles a man and states that he is here because he has been summoned. He then expresses concern that he may have gone a bit too far with his tricks and frightened the lady. Our F-ranker quickly glances at his status menu, discovering that the Dokebi is a B-rank hunter named Yun. He contemplates whether he can influence Yun, considering he is unaffiliated. Yujin quickly thinks of an idea. If he could get this Dokebi to help them, Hyan wouldn't need to go to America. He sees this as his only chance. He tries his wordplay, telling Yun to quit the prank, asserting that it wasn't scary at all. Yun replies that he just saw our hero trembling in fear. However, Yujin refuses to accept this, arguing that such childish tricks won't work on him. He deliberately steps on Yun's nerves, asking if he has dedicated his life to scaring people. Our hero holds out his hands and proposes a bet, challenging Yun to see if he can scare him or not. As the scene shifts, the lady awakens sweating bullets. She asks where Dokebi went, only to learn that he disappeared. Our hero confides a secret to her. The legend's fashion sense is pretty trash. After an awkward silence, our boy reassures her not to be afraid since the Dokebi is gone. She looks down in regret, hoping to have her questions answered. She shares her struggle to continue research in Korea, so our hero offers to help her. She is thrilled, thinking he will join her at the university. But he quickly calms her down, clarifying that he can provide her with data instead, as data acquisition is her biggest hurdle. With confidence, he declares that he will soon have a reliable source of information. Yujin's memory flashes back to a while ago when he made a bet with Dokaibi. While the science lady lay unconscious, he had dared the Dokaibi to scare him with his pranks. If he won, he wanted the traveling ghost to be his underling. This makes Yunyun laugh at his laughable conditions. So the floating prankster accepts, on the condition that our dragon slayer will have to be his underling, for a solid 20 years. With that, our hero instantly materializes a contract, making Dokaibi suspicious as to why a loser would bind himself so easily. Tilting his head, the floating ghost accuses Yujin of having bad intentions with his strange bet. Sweating heavily, our protagonist subtly confirms that Dokaibi is still unaware of his legendary fear resistance, which is key to securing his easy win. To satisfy the masked ghost, he confidently unveils his hidden motive. Blushing, our boy admits that he thinks Dokaibi is really cool. Remembering all the heroic deeds the masked figure has done, Yujin feels that he wins no matter what. If he wins, it would be awesome. But if he loses, he gets to be the great Dokaibi's subordinate, making the naughty ghost blush. Drowning in compliments, the weird guy begins dancing in glee. He brags that he would never let someone be his subordinate even if they begged, but the bet really tickles his fancy. Our hero assures him he won't lose, and they agree that Dokaibi will get 3 chances to frighten him. Returning to the present, Yujin tells the research fanatic that he'll get her the data she needs to work in her homeland. Since he isn't a fan of crunching numbers at a desk, he simply asks her to share the profits of her research once she succeeds by using his information. Despite her hesitation about the project being unfruitful, our big brother expresses his strong faith in her skills. She blushes at his compliments. To win her trust, he tells her that a big A-rank dungeon will appear that day, even giving the exact location and environment. Shocked by his info, she asks how he would know something like this, but he refuses to delve into his sources. So before taking his leave, he tells her to have faith in his words and confirms that her research will undoubtedly succeed. After reminding her to tell Director Seok to book the gate, he gets ready to destroy Dokaibi in their bet. The scene shifts to our hero relaxing in his room at night when Dokaibi jump scares him while wearing an Oni mask. Unfazed, our hero casually plays with peace, shutting down the first attempt. The next time, while carrying a box of knives for Wu to sharpen, 2 undead hands tug on his feet, causing him to fall face flat on the floor. Fuming with rage, he asks if the jerk of a ghost came to kill him rather than scare him. After failing the second time, the third strike also comes at night. As Yujin grabs some water out of the fridge, a bloody straw puppet appears overhead. Surprised, he compliments the effort before being caught off guard by a second attack from behind, which also impresses him. Just then, a dreary man with a knife appears behind him. Surprisingly, this terrifies Dokaibi, while Yujin casually greets Wu. His fellow F-ranker shares that he started grinding since he couldn't sleep, but overheard our protagonist talking to Dokaibi. As his eyes spot the 6-legged ghost, Wu collapses on the spot, foaming at the mouth. With the third attempt also failing, our boy gains a legendary subordinate. It is explained that the Dokaibi are spirits born from old objects. When Yujin asks how he came to be, Dokaibi shares that he awakened in a pool of water below a dungeon, which granted him his powers. Hearing this story, our boy pieces together that the teleport skill works just like dungeon gates. But what shocks him most is that Yun, the Dokaibi, is a real ghost. Using his knowledge of Chinese words, Yujin correctly guesses Yun's origin. Anyway, he picks up a tablet and briefs his impressed underling on his new job. However, the masked ghost glares at him silently. He then starts throwing a tantrum, refusing to do anything boring, criticizing how the Dokaibi is acting with his boss. Our hero reveals that the ghost will travel to various countries to collect data from their dungeons. He tries to butter up the lazy ghost who can bypass restrictions with his concealment and teleportation skills. Unimpressed, the masked ghost asks what purpose this serves. Yujin gleefully replies that he wants to make the Dokaibi a hero. If they knew more about dungeons, fewer people would die, and he would become a world-famous hero. He makes the floating guy fantasize about all the merchandise people would buy. With that, Yun snatches the device and bolts off happily. However, he asks if he really has to go to other countries. Curious, Yujin asks if he cannot travel that far and gets a negative response. This reminds our hero that he couldn't find such a skill in Yun's stats either. Suddenly, he shoots out an "I love you" with a dead serious expression. The Dokaibi is taken aback and inquires why his boss would suddenly confess. Continuing his weird tangent, our Dragon Slayer begins making up nonsense about Dokaibi being creatures of love. Concluding that a true Dokaibi should be accustomed to love, he tells Yun to always greet him with love. This strongly creeps out the masked ghost, who disappears out of embarrassment. The next morning, Haiyan, along with her uncle, excitedly rushes to find Yujin. Our hero, busy playing with peace, stares at the two in confusion. They begin tossing him in the air to celebrate his amazing prediction. As Peace prepares to attack them, they put him down and explain that the slime dungeon, full of valuable green jelly, has made a fortune for the guild. The uncle and niece duo continues flattering our boy. Enthralled, the dungeon nerd lady promises to do her best to return his favor. The director adds that he'll put a tracker on Yujin for protection at all times. Annoyed that even the director is stealing his freedom like Yuhyun, our guy tells Peace to attack him. The man argues that they can't risk a great talent like Yujin getting hurt, but our hero suggests they focus their resources on Hyun instead, as she will handle most of the work. Saying he's only good at beast taming, our protagonist quickly dashes away. Fretting over how to save his peaceful life from unnecessary tasks, he understands that his predictions won't always be spot on. Not wanting to be caught lying, he ditches the uncle and niece duo. Weirdly enough, in her presumptuous thinking, Hyun praises him for being a true researcher, wishing only to contribute without taking any credit. The scene shifts to a glitzy game show arena, showcasing a maze designed for cats and dogs. As the commentator explains the rules, Peace effortlessly dashes through the maze, quickly reaching the finish line. The cute little orange guy bursts through the ribbon and into our hero's arms. The whole crowd goes wild in applause to congratulate our beast tamer. Grateful for the cheers, our hero is pleased to have accepted Director Seok's invitation to the game show. He recalls how the director had been quite serious, urging him to make his face known to the public. The director, stroking his chin, had explained that becoming globally recognized brings a layer of safety. Though he had agreed, our guy feels a bit uneasy, remembering past troubles before the time rewind. Anyways, as he makes his little adorable partner smile, all the participants melt in its cuteness. As they praise his totally adorbs monster, Yujin casually smiles. Excited by all the attention he's getting, the beast and tamer duo start flexing. Finally, the show goes on break. Our satisfied protagonist sits in bliss, glad to show off Peace's cuteness to the world. He contemplates making a social media with its heartwarming pics, to capitalize on its fame with plushies and other merch. Lost in his daydream, he fantasizes about how cool he'll look as Peace's tamer when it grows up. Without realizing who is nearby, he announces that anyone wanting an autograph should line up. Then, a towering woman happily agrees and curiously asks if the autograph will include a cute paw print. Yujin's eyes fly open, startled to see Hyuna. Still recovering from the shock, our boy questions why the guildmaster is at his game show. So she casually replies that she's one of the 3 A rankers stationed to prevent accidents from his cute little monster going on a frenzy. While the guys around stare at her in awe, she offers her hand to help our hero up. Like a true Sigma, he brushes her off and stands up on his own. Confused, she teases him, wondering if he wants her to carry him like a princess, which only embarrasses him further. He tries to explain that acting so friendly in public could lead to misunderstandings about their relationship. But the big lady loudly proclaims that she wants Yujin to father her kids, scaring the crap out of him. She asks if Yujin would like to join her again. Pouting, he shows her a fearless attitude. She admits that this makes her love him even more. Yujin goes on to say that he sees everyone as just humans, so he has no reason to be afraid. Hyuna only smiles wider. Placing her hand on his shoulder, she tells him that while his view is admirable, it's also a bit concerning. Just then, Yerim arrives with drinks for the two of them, only to be greeted by a surprise. The Breaker Guildmaster stuns the audience as she announces, with charm, that she's borrowing him for a short while. As she does, a whirlwind of magical energy envelops our beast and tamer duo. Peace begins hissing as our hero inquires why she placed an airflow barrier. Hyuna merrily laughs and explains that it is a simple soundproof room. She assures him that a subordinate will inform Yerim on the outside. However, our hero's astute eye instantly recognizes that it is far from a simple skill. He's not surprised that Yerim was unable to do anything. Standing before him, the daunting lady tells him that they can finally talk in secret. Sweating a bit, he asks what secret is so important. Hyuna replies that it's more about keeping others from eavesdropping. When she brings up Yuhyun, Yujin's expression turns serious. She shares her concern, pointing out that Yujin doesn't even know what his own brother's up to. Peace hisses again, but Hyuna only blushes at its cuteness. She then steps closer, giving our big brother a friendly warning to dig deeper into Yuhyun's actions. She shares that she simply laughed in the meeting, but she advises him to do his research if he wants to work for the guild. She questions his judgment, wondering if he really believes that his brother forged a guild purely by merit. Lady Moon calls his view of Yuhyun something not even found in storybooks for kids. Although Yujin attempts to defend his little brother, the big lady bursts his bubble. The guildmaster reads his thoughts out loud and calls Yuhyun a saint. But then, she states that the saint does not crush others to empower their own guild. Hyuna then delves into Yuhyun's dark past. Hyuna begins her tale with the story of her awakening, revealing how she had to leave her athletic career behind. The reason? She was forced to become a guildmaster, a role she never wanted. Completely clueless about running a guild, she partnered up with Choi Seok-won, only to become the guild's public face. She explains that, in Korea, all the top 5 guilds became tools for big companies, all except World's Edge, led by Yoo Hyun. She recalls how the high schooler turned down every investor, making countless enemies along the way. So she thought he'd fail for sure. When she heard about him being poisoned, she laughs now, thinking how foolish she was to defend him. She had gone to her investors to complain about their dirty schemes, only to find nothing but chaos and destruction. She thought a monster was responsible until she saw the culprit. There he was, piercing through his enemy's chest. A man begged for mercy, but Yoo Hyun showed none. When she called out, asking if he was okay, he lunged at her, barely giving her time to block his attack. In the end, the Breaker Guildmaster then tells Yoojin how World's Edge secretly eliminated each faction. Our hero, speechless, listens as she explains that this is the way of S-rankers, and he knows nothing about it, living so far from his brother's world. Our F-Rambler frowns upon discovering his brother's dark side. The big lady then leans to whisper in his ear. Then, the naughty lady leans in close, whispering a warning in his ear. She cautions that it's just a matter of time before the monster he's hiding from his brother fully reveals itself. As she advises him to distance himself, she gets a call from Yoo Hyun, saved as Crazy Bastard number 2 on her phone. With a cheeky smile, she offers our hero help in staying away from his brother. But our boy remains unfazed, aware of the dark politics that warped his brother's life. He snatches her phone, assuring Yoo Hyun that he's safe. Then, his little brother asks if the big lady has mentioned anything odd. Yoojin pauses for a moment, then casually admits she spilled some wild rumors about him. Lady Moon looks disappointed, but he understands that there are evil people in the world. He's not surprised by his brother's bloody history, considering his own hands aren't clean either. With a smug grin, our hero tells his little brother that he's being underestimated. So as a friendly payback, he announces that he will also talk crap about the big lady, standing all contentedly before him. When he mentions the April of the previous year, her jaw drops in angst. She instantly swipes the phone like it is the new iPhone, and asks how the hell Yoojin knows about her incident. She shakes him, demanding he reveal his source, but our Dragonslayer refuses to budge. She threatens him, saying she could kill him, but he casually shrugs and points out that she won't get a beast mount from his dead body. Yoojin smirks and says this is revenge for bad-mouthing his brother. He tells Hyuna to keep quiet, reminding her it's in their best interests. The big lady facepalms, saying she misjudged our boys. With a snap of her fingers, the barrier dispels. She's glad, seeing that the supposedly timid guy won't get pushed around by other guildmasters. Fuming, Yareem interrupts the two and runs in, angry that the big lady laid her grubby paws on our boy. But Hyuna laughs, saying that it was just 2 adults talking, and warns Yoojin never to let her secret come to light. Our Lady's man watches from afar as the 2 S-rank ladies fight over him. Seeing their rough but amazing chemistry, he's alarmed at the thought of Yareem possibly joining the Breaker Guild with the only other female S-ranker in the country. Referring to his future knowledge, he remembers that both S-rank guildmasters disbanded their guilds. Feeding water to his cute little partner, my guy considers hiring the big lady, considering she'd be a good friend for Yareem. He jokes to himself that Yareem could use a female mentor, but he nearly spits his water out when Yareem boldly declares she wants him to father her kids to one-up Lady Moon. My guy immediately jumps in to pull Yareem away from the other crazy S-rank lady. As the show wraps up, he ends up saying something he'll later regret. Later in his dorm, Yoojin watches in horror as his buddies laugh at his nickname upgrading from Beast Tamer to Beast Daddy. The next day, our F-rank Dragonslayer and his pal Wu carry rusty knives to the guild's equipment facility. Yoojin laughs about getting banned for sharpening knives in the dorm kitchen, and then suggests that Wu get chummy with the guild's smiths, who'll soon be his new colleagues. The scruffy-looking guy agrees, saying that'd be perfect since he's no dungeon diver. Yoojin just grins, knowing his buddy will soon be the top dog in the facility. As they step inside, they're hit with a wave of intense heat. They wander around, checking out the place, until Wu reaches for a dazzlingly bright magic stone, but a muscular guy yells at him to back off, nearly scaring him out of his skin. The buff guy scolds them, saying they shouldn't just waltz into the facility like that. Yoojin explains that he's the one who requested workspace access, and soon enough, he and Wu bow to each other. The big guy then gives Wu a quick interview while leading them to their new station. Seeing a fancy grinder, Wu lightens up, but the bossy buff guy says touching it is prohibited, before showing them to the dingy room he'll actually be using. Wu looks unfazed, but Yoojin is surprised at how shabby the place is. The guy points to a whetstone left for Wu and walks off without a care. But our big brother can't help but speak up about how poorly his friend is being treated. This only earns him some odd looks and mutterings about nepotism. Wu tells our pumped-up F-rank to chill, saying he's just seen as a rookie who lucked into the job. He sets down a stool, grateful for the equipment he has. Yujin watches curiously, wondering if his buddy can still work with a whetstone after all this time. The homeless smith gets right into it, pushing the pedal and getting started. Our hero is thrilled to see his friend's skills still sharp. He quickly notices that Wu's manual sharpening results are far better than the machine outside. As he warms up, Wu ties his hair back and starts grinding like a pro. Our big brother warns him not to overdo it, but soon, he's captivated. Watching Wu sharpen blade after blade with laser focus, Yujin remembers the Wu he once knew. The crybaby who flinched at every little thing. The cool blacksmith look surprises our hero, who gets lost observing the man's craftsmanship. When he tells Wu that he's gonna leave, his buddy is surprised to see him. Overly humble as always, he apologizes to our hero for stealing his time, but Yujin silently wishes he could see his friend's cool moment longer. Thinking of Wu as a fish back in the ocean after almost drying out on land, Yujin realizes how clear it is that Wu was born to be a craftsman. Feeling relieved that he won't have to worry about his friend's future, he heads out. But the very next day, their crybaby is bedridden. Wu starts doubting himself, worrying that his noodle-like muscles just aren't cut out for the job. Meanwhile, back at the facility, the other crafters wonder why he hasn't shown up again. Hearing that he's in pain, a lady jokes that he's probably faking it, laughing at how the nepotist gave up after a half-hearted attempt. But one of them points out his work, asking if they still believe the newbie has no talent. They're stunned, seeing that this so-called nepotist sharpened 1,000 knives by hand. No wonder he's completely wiped out. Returning from his bed rest, Wu leaves everyone at the facility stunned as they watch him skillfully sharpen each blade, reaching an impressive 5,600 out of his 10,000 target. Not stopping there, he later surprises Yujin and Yerim with his amazing cooking skills. After one bite, the Ice Witch practically adopts him as her big bro, begging him to stay with her forever. When Yerim mentions that she'll miss such delicious meals in the dungeon, our hero checks in on how she's doing. She complains that dungeon runs have become boring since she only gets assigned B rank and lower dungeons because she's still a minor. As she munches away, she daydreams about leveling up through daily dungeon raids. But our big brother advises her to take it easy since hunters can't feel their mana drain, and running out mid-dungeon is a recipe for disaster. He then has a thought about her using potions and asks how much mana she has. When she casually answers with 102, Yujin gets a dose of depression, comparing his measly 2 mana. Meanwhile, Yerim tries to convince Wu to join dungeon runs as a cook, predicting his business would explode. Noticing his humble buddy's hands all roughed up, Yujin asks if Wu is pushing himself too hard, sharpening blades and cooking all day. But he replies with a smile, saying it's his pleasure to do these things. Still concerned for his fellow F-ranker, Yujin gifts Wu his gloves. Wu is astonished to find their A-rank gloves, but Yujin insists it's too hot for him to use them, so Wu should have them instead. Touched by the gesture, Wu clings to him, declaring that he'll never take them off. Amusingly creeped out, my guy wishes he at least takes them off in the bathroom. Later that day, Wu gets ready to tackle another box of knives. As he wipes his sweat, he wonders about the intense heat from the facility's flames. Suddenly, someone hands him a blue towel. The lady explains that it's imbued with magic to keep him cool. Wu blushes at the kindness, and his work continues smoothly. When he finishes hours later, he notices most people have left. His gaze falls on the brilliantly shining magic crystal, and as he moves closer, he hears the familiar holler of the buff boss, warning him not to touch it. Indulging him, the man delves into the history of the S-rank magic stone. He admits with some frustration that despite its immense value, no one has the skill to work with it. He laments that even World's Edge, one of the top guilds, lacks a craftsman who can handle such a treasure. He then outright tells Wu that an F-rank like him shouldn't even dream about it, but quickly sympathizes with Wu, acknowledging that he's unfairly labeled as a nepotist. He insists that only the skilled make it through official channels. Praising Wu's rare talent, he calls him a gem, buried under a lack of opportunity. Wu is taken aback by the unexpected admiration. The buff guy then invites him to continue working at the facility, even suggesting the use of costly equipment to overcome his low stats. Pleasantly surprised, a warm smile spreads across Wu's face as he promises to give his best. Everything seems to be going swimmingly until one day when 2 investigators show up and demand he come with them. When his jacked supervisor asks what's going on, one of the investigators grimly discloses that they need to question Wu regarding Yujin's sudden disappearance. Wu's face drains of color at the awful news. He cries out that Yujin was supposed to be in the guild's building all day. He adds that no one strange contacted him either, making the lady wonder if he intentionally disappeared. Suddenly, Yerim bursts onto the scene, having left her dungeon raid as soon as she heard about our hero's vanishing. Before she can join the conversation, the suited man pulls her aside, mentioning that Yuhyun has returned. Deeply worried, Wu offers to help, but the man savagely replies that the best an F-ranker like him can do is stay out of the way since he is useless. Flashing back to a few hours ago, Yujin was relaxing on a couch. Surrounded by torn-up furniture thanks to Peace wreaking havoc, he's glad that all his friends are progressing amazingly. But when Peace starts yanking at his hair, Yujin decides it's time to take his little buddy out for training, hoping to cheer him up. As they leave, a new bodyguard asks for their destination. He begrudgingly remembers the annoying protection arrangement where the big guilds take turns sending guards, mostly to keep tabs on him. While the man notifies his team of their coming, he analyzes him to be a B ranker from the MKC guild. The scene takes a funny turn when Peace stretches out from Yujin's arms to press the elevator button. Our F ranker is delighted and glances to see the guard's reaction, who is absolutely indifferent. The two then wait in an awkward silence until the elevator doors open, and a group of men in red suddenly barges in with a pile of luggage. Our hero checks them out as well, quickly recognizing they're not from the guild. Suspicious, he presses one of them with questions, but receives a reasonable answer. The man explains how they borrow World Edge's training room to occasionally test out equipment. The men start laughing and reassure my guy that they're not sus at all. And as the elevator halts, they leave on their merry ways. Reflecting on it, our F-ranker finds them extra suspicious for not acknowledging Peace's cuddliness. He shakes it off, reminding himself that not everyone has to find his little buddy cute. Finally, he arrives and lets his adorable companion roam free, not even realizing he's surrounded. Just then, he turns and gets hit with a blast of red powder. But while the poison does nothing to him, Peace is knocked out cold in an instant. The gang smothers him with a toxic napkin. They're all surprised to see our mere F-ranker still full of energy. One of the older guys guesses he might have a detox item on him and steps closer. In a panic, Yujin kicks him away and manages to break free from his captors. He bolts, yelling for the bodyguard in blue to save him from these creeps. But instead, the jerk punches him in the gut, dropping our boy to the ground. Revealing himself as the big boss, he scolds his useless underlings. The big guy orders the gang to strip off our F-ranker's overpowered gear. Piece by piece, they remove his gloves and belt, but he's still not affected by the sleeping poison. The blonde guy notices something off about his earrings and yanks them right out. Suddenly, he's down to just 2 mana points out of 29, after already burning through his reserves fighting back. Limp and drained, our F-ranker recalls his lecture to Yerem on the danger of mana depletion. Using a security loophole, they finish up by stuffing him into a piece of luggage and casually heading out the front door. Drifting out of consciousness, our guy makes a mental note that anyone who doesn't find Peace adorable is an enemy, no doubt. Hours later, he gets a rude awakening with a water bucket on his face. Coughing and sputtering, Yujin finds himself face to face with a B ranker. Sizing up the kidnapper, Kim Wooji, he figures this B ranker must be some big shot from a mercenary guild. However, Wooji apologizes for the trouble before grabbing him by the hair to lift him up. Not wasting a beat, the kidnapper sweetly threatens our guy, demanding the owner's token for his pet fire lion. Casually taking out a smoke, he assures Yujin that no one can find him. He repeats his request innocently, so our wise tamer grasps that Peace is still alive and probably nearby. He then points out that the 5 guilds are probably on their way to find him. With a pompous smile, the man shows him that the bodyguard is still standing guard outside the room, making sure no one finds out about our tamer's vanishing. The guy laughs maniacally, revealing that even if the search begins, they'll never be found in one of the thousands of containers on the bay. He mentions that they're soon headed on a cruise to Japan. Curious, Yujin asks if Japan is specifically targeting him, but Woojae clarifies that they plan to auction him off, suggesting a scheme to sell him overseas where they can't be reached. Realizing he needs to buy time before they hit international waters, Yujin knows that without stalling, neither the association nor the guilds will be able to save him. The arrogant kidnapper tells our boy to give up, but instead, Yujin starts laughing confidently. He mocks Woojae, saying he's not scared of crap. Knowing they can't damage him as valuable cargo, he flips Woojae off. Annoyed, Woojae forgets his smoke and, angered by Yujin's taunts, bashes his knee into our unarmed F-ranker. Woojae declares this as a reminder of Yujin's place, but Yujin simply replies that he knows it well. This further provokes the bandit, who responds with his boot. Grinding his boot into our hero's leg, Woojae regrets that he can't damage his merchandise any further. Meanwhile, my guy acts suspiciously masochistic, secretly hoping that the thug hurts him badly enough to land him in the hospital. To his surprise, he is dragged away to meet someone special. Woojae throws him against a cage, introducing him to a magical beast his gang has raised. Still dazed, our dragon slayer feels a slick black tentacle wrap around his neck. The ugly bandit enjoys seeing him shriek like a baby. He then introduces the C-rank monster, the poisonous tentacle monster known as Creek. The kidnapper shares a lovely fact that its poison makes one writhe on the floor in unbearable pain, frothing at the mouth all in the span of 30 minutes. With that, Wu-jae leaves, hoping to see Yujin beg for mercy on his return. He leaves our horrified F-ranker alone to endure the excruciating 30 minutes. Meanwhile, back at the guild, Yerim approaches Yu-hyun, clearly on a mission. The guildmaster greets her casually, starting to share the latest update from the MKC guild. Yerim cuts him off by grabbing his collar, demanding he at least give her an explanation, as he'd promised Yujin would be protected. Yu-hyun, calm as ever, explains it's an unusual anomaly. He assures her that hunters who work for S-rankers are loyal and obedient to their alpha like a pack. He points out that all bodyguards assigned to his brother were meant to be loyal hunters only. When Yerim asks why this matters, Yu-hyun reveals that guards were switched at the last minute by factions within the MKC guild. Apparently the guild is funded by a rich guy who is responsible for power struggles between factions of the guild. He points out that Choi Seo-kwan, the face of the guild, is frustrated exactly because of having lost control of his guild. Yu-hyun knew this would happen, but he didn't expect World's Edge to get caught in their strife. Especially out of his expectations was them using low-rank hunters, who he shouldn't have overlooked since his brother is a mere F-ranker as well. The Ice Queen begins to calm down, but Yu-hyun points out they still have no leads, which is exactly why he reached out to her. Although hesitant, he suggests she use her interrogation skill, White Corpse. This request doesn't sit well with Yerim, though it doesn't surprise her either, as she's already picked up the scent of blood nearby. Yerim quickly realizes she'll need to question the dead guard in the elevator. As the metallic doors slide open, there lies the gruesomely mutilated body of a B-rank bodyguard. Yu-hyun states that this will provide a far more accurate account than a confession. He also makes her promise never to reveal any of this to Yujin, a promise she quietly agrees to keep. Back at the bay, Wu-ji notices he's no longer getting updates from his accomplice. At first he's concerned if the guy got caught already, but then dismisses it since everything is worth it, so long as he secures the token. After half an hour, he gladly opens the door and asks our F-rank tamer how he's doing. To his surprise, my guy is unconscious on the floor. The man steps on him to check if the curse to prevent fainting isn't working. He mocks Yujin for not having even the energy to piss himself, but our protagonist orders his new pet, Blackie, to have fun. Caught off guard, the confident B-rank criminal barely dodges the monster's attack. Getting his arm caught by Blackie, he's unable to believe his eyes. With a grin, our guy strokes the creek like it's just a pet, revealing that the so-called weak F-ranker can control more than just baby monsters. He laughs, saying only a fool would show all their cards up front, then orders Blackie to take a bite out of him. The guy grabs onto Blackie's tongue in a panic, frustrated that he wasn't informed of such a broken skill. Our F-ranker taunts him by boasting about his cool ability, and plenty of others. As the next half hour drags on, he watches in terror as the creek devours Wu-jae, its curse working its nasty magic. Disgusted by Wu-jae's worsening state, our guy ponders what might have happened if the man didn't have legendary curse resistance. Deciding it's time to finish things up, he pulls a dagger from his inventory. Without control over the C-rank monster anymore, he wonders if he can still handle it. To his surprise, the creature backs away, intimidated. 2 notifications inform him that his Dragon Slayer and Rukhtar's natural enemy effects are in play, doubling his power against the creek. As a Dragon Slayer, he's got a natural advantage, even against this cursed dragon. However, he is aware that his attack abilities are pretty trash, so he resorts to using his influencing skills. Casually tossing his knife away, he catches the dragon off guard. With a C-rank magic stone from his inventory, he invites Blackie to cooperate with him, while the vile kidnapper watches our hero tame the dragon once more before his eyes. Under orders from its master, the monster pounces onto the proud B-ranker. But the man shows some balls and breaks free from the tentacles restraining him. The curse on his arm still tortures him though, which lets our protagonist seize the moment and stab him from behind. In a rage, Wu-jae smacks my guy back. But with a smug grin, he drives his blade into the so-called mighty B-ranker as if his skin were nothing. The man curses the cocky F-ranker, who orders Blackie to bite Wu-jae again. In his arrogance, the kidnapper brings out his sickle, confident that he can take down a C-rank monster single-handedly. And so he does, decapitating the dragon with a single slash. Clearly pleased with himself, he laughs that Yujin is a fool to believe he could win against him, a mighty B-ranker. He bursts into maniacal laughter, eager for his revenge. But suddenly, a black miasma completely paralyzes the jerk. Dumbfounded, he wonders why the low-rank curse is active even when the creek's corpse is dead cold. Too bad bro doesn't know what's about to happen to him, as Yujin's final gratitude skill activates. Not only does he gain double the dragon's stats, but the Dragon Slayer effect doubles it to a solid 4x multiplier. Though he briefly hesitates to unleash such power on his kidnapper, our boy rationalizes it with self-defense. Staring with devilish eyes, he asks the jerk why he would kill an innocent creature. With his fingers digging into Wu-jae's skull, He demands to know where his little buddy is hidden. Woo-jae, completely unaware of his doomed fate, spouts insults back at him. Seeing the pointlessness of the exchange, Yujin decides it's time to end it. Using his sticky poison skill, he starts melting Woo-jae from the face down. He apologizes one last time, muttering that no one should ever know the full extent of his final gratitude skill. Despite his inner pacifist regrets getting kidnapped, forcing him to take lives unnecessarily, our Dragon Slayer disappears, leaving not a trace of a body behind, at the risk of Yarim using White Corpse. As Yujin makes his way out, all the door handles stick to his hands. Struggling to control his overwhelming power, our Dragon Slayer thinks about how to spend the next 7 days with the upgraded final gratitude. He checks to see if Blackie possesses any useful skills. True to a lizard, he spots a skill that camouflages him, and one even lets him detect foes stronger than himself. As he continues on his way, the crushed bones in his leg ache, but his OP stats lessen the pain. Concealed by his stealth skill, our protagonist begins searching for peace, traveling a path ironically filled with violence. Fortunately, he stumbles upon the same jerks who kidnapped him. With his invisible tentacles, he chokes them while casually walking by. He walks in on a boss guy casually scrolling on his phone. After kicking open the steel doors with raw leg strength, he wonders who the man is. Judging by the man's demeanor, he seems like the top dog, while the guy looks shocked at an F-ranker escaping so easily. Trying to distract our hero using Peace's name, the scumbag grabs a box and tries to sneak attack him. He misses, but then rambles that our F-ranker should have run when he had the chance. The guy summons a phantom sword and taunts him, saying he has the key to Peace's cage. On further analysis, he discovers the C-ranker with a storm axe is Park Sang-gun, a nobody. So our hero whips his face with his tentacle and warns him to quickly tell him where the cage is. Failing spectacularly to talk back, the guy gets slapped again. The cycle of beating continues every time he spews crap. Beaten and battered, the C-ranker asks if Yujin got kidnapped by choice. But my guy tells him to mind his own business and give him the damn key. He keeps torturing the punk while expressing his reluctance to hurt him further with an axe in hand. With a charming smile, our hero unveils his second cursed dragon skill, nearly melting the charred black axe. The guy is horrified as he watches black goop spill beside him and instantly spills the beans. But he's not stupid and presents a contract. He wishes for safety after giving his contract in exchange for the key, so our hero also adds an NDA about his powers. The guy breathes a sigh of relief upon being free from the threat, but he waits as our guy leaves to rescue Peace. Then, the idiot tries to catch our Dragon Slayer by surprise. Transforming his hands into claws, he starts choking our hero. Silencing our hero, the man obnoxiously laughs that the F-rank fool can't defend himself, since the contract's curse will blind him. He mocks our hero for being naive enough to sign the contract without a second thought. But the F-rank amateur tears the cursed contract. This C-rank jerk stares in disbelief, being completely dumbfounded. Grabbing his seemingly tough claws, Yujin uses the dragon's curse to inflict unimaginable agony upon the idiot. Annoyed by the gruesome outcome, he admits never intending to leave him alive from the start. Yujin prays no one discovers his crimes, hoping they chuck it up to an internal conflict gone wrong. Anyway, on his way out, he decides to leave the unconscious guys alive, hoping his rescue team will detain them. Finally returning to his dead dragon, he refuses to leave it, knowing the poor thing would be salvaged into equipment. Instead, he extracts its magic stone. Finally reaching Peace's cage, he announces that Daddy has arrived. But upon entering, the cute guy remains unresponsive. Conflicted about raising suspicion over his unbelievably easy jailbreak with Peace, he gently picks up the drowsy little cub. Deciding to do nothing inside the cage, he waits for the rescue team to arrive. He watches his adorable fluffball sleep to warm his soul. Sentimental all of a sudden, he prays his pal doesn't kick the bucket before he does. Many hours pass and a rescue team storms the compound to find our duo lying unconscious in the cage. The lady in charge orders her men to break the cage open and get in touch with Yoo-hyun. Suddenly, the system alerts our boy that another S-ranker is on the way. Our slumbering hero is soon jolted awake by his rowdy brother. He plays the damsel in distress with his brother. But right behind, a frantic Sunghan and Yarim join in, with Yarim even making another entrance in the cage. Seeing everyone rush to help him, he wryly smiles at the VIP status he's gained. But when Yoo-hyun gets him up, a strong pain shoots along his injured leg. The worried little brother asks if he's okay, and shouts at his subordinates to bring over a healer. Greatly distressed, Yarim and Sunghan also express their concern. But our Dragon Slayer insists that he's A-okay. However, Yoo-hyun shocks everyone by scooping his big bro princess style. So our boy tears up at his brother's affectionate gesture, despite the intense embarrassment. On the way home in a taxi, he bids Yarim goodbye. He learns she'll be investigating, which unsettles him since she'll have to use her cursed skill. But his thoughts are cut short as Yoo-hyun suggests a hospital visit. Yujin insists he's already patched up by the healer, but his little brother isn't having it. The real reason he can't go is to hide his souped-up stats. His tone shifts, and he starts pouting, fearing he'll be tested and anesthetized by strangers all over again. Yu-hyun, suddenly aware of the trauma he overlooked, agrees to go straight home. Of course, he still scans his big bro from head to toe for injuries, and grows serious at the scent of reptiles lingering. Annoyed by his brother's overly keen nose, my guy brushes it off as the ocean's scent. For extra caution, he even activates his stealth skill. In the end, MKC faces a ban from supplying guards, and security checks for visitors are ramped up, requiring guildmasters to vouch personally. Meanwhile, security checks on visitors have also been buffed up, including making guildmasters to personally vouch for the guards. Yet, recently, Yujin's been having nightmares about the B-ranker who kidnapped him. Jolting awake, he wonders if it was all a dream, but he then remembers they are Blackie's memories he's inherited thanks to final gratitude. He curls up for a bit before going for water, thinking of how much he suffered before the rewind. Remembering how low-class hunters often die, he thinks back to his own first time. The trauma was so intense that he spent a week drinking alone in his room until some people, probably Yu-hyun's men, rushed him to the hospital. But he regains confidence, knowing his S-rank friends won't be defeated so easily. Concerned about Wu, he checks on him and finds his bed empty. In the workshop, our badass smith is grinding away at rusty knives like a pro. Finished with one, he tosses it aside and picks up another, his count still just 20 shy of 10,000. Laughing at his situation, he lets out a crazy laugh and smashes a knife in frustration. Wu pities his pathetic condition and menial work. He laments his inability to accomplish anything while his friend was in danger. His mind flashes back to the investigator who told him to stay put, emphasizing that he's powerless to help. Adding insult to injury, they noted no significant ties between the two in his records. Wu is heartbroken about being labeled an untrustworthy stranger. Back in the present, he sheds a few tears, feeling utterly useless when it really counts. The next morning, Yu-hyun receives a call from his brother. In a panic, Yujin informs him that this time Wu has left for good, and before leaving, he even cooked a parting beef bone soup for him. He expresses his fear that Wu might get himself kidnapped again. Wait, is it a tradition to cook beef bone soup before parting? Meanwhile, Wu walks the streets, letting out a long sigh as he feels ashamed of himself. He considers himself a free loafer who is useless. Wandering aimlessly, he walks with his eyes down, having nowhere to go. Suddenly, he realizes that his shoelace is untied. Just as he bends down to tie it, things tumble out of his bag. Two children passing by spot a pass card for the World's Edge Guild slipping out of his bag. They become overly excited and bombard Wu with questions about the highest-ranked dungeon he has visited. A crowd gathers around him, making him increasingly anxious. When he can no longer bear the pressure, Wu shouts out loud, declaring that he is merely a housekeeper in the dorm. This does not deter the children. Instead, they continue to ask him even more questions. The poor guy spills the beans, revealing that he only has an F-class weapon buff. This revelation puts an end to the children's excitement. They argue among themselves, stating that according to their mom, F-rankers are useless and can't even earn anything good. All the harsh words pierce through Wu, causing him to break down in tears. He imagines everyone abandoning him because of his worthless skills. Bowing down on the floor, he cries like a baby, feeling utterly defeated. The little boy asks Wu why he is crying, and his big sister scolds him, saying it's all his fault. The children then come up with a plan to help Wu and decide to take him along to earn him a good skill. Their first method involves subjecting him to water torture. Next, they push him down from the second floor. Mr. Wu feels embarrassed, wondering how a guy like him is being bullied by little children. The motivated children then lead him to jaywalk across an 8-lane road. Just as the little boy is about to jump in front of a car, Wu pulls him back at the last moment, instinctively protecting him. Wu scolds the little siblings for engaging in such dangerous antics. The two kids respond, insisting that all they were trying to do was help him. They argue that, based on what they've learned, skills are bound to appear when one's life is in danger. Wu recalls that he was awakened when his life was at stake. Concerned for the children, he asks them if they engage in such dangerous activities every day. He tries to convince them to focus on studying instead of wasting their time, but the kids don't seem interested. They point out that studying won't earn them anything. Listening to the kids, it becomes clear that, unfortunately, the focus of this world has shifted from studying to merely becoming a combat hunter. As they stand there, a sudden explosion echoes through the air, followed by an announcement urging people to evacuate to safety due to a nearby dungeon break. Wu checks his phone and realizes that the location is just in their neighborhood. However, before he can react, the children take off toward the dungeon, hoping they might awaken their skills in the chaos. Wu runs after them, shouting that it is completely unsafe for them to go. As the scene shifts, the media team is shown flying in helicopters, capturing footage of the entire dungeon break situation. They are reporting that spider-like monsters have appeared everywhere, spreading chaos across the area. In a sudden moment, one of the reporters catches sight of the kids and Wu running toward the danger on his camera. The footage goes live, showing that a few people still haven't evacuated the scene. Before long, the kids are seen fleeing from the spider monsters with Wu, who now regrets following them. The young girl, confused, questions why they are running away after coming all this way, but even she can't help but continue running at the sight of the terrifying creatures. As a spider monster closes in on them, Wu and the young boy freeze in terror while the girl steps in front, pretending to be a hero ready to protect them. She dramatically attempts a childish version of an S-class majestic fist, but the act is short-lived as the spider easily swats her aside. She falls to the ground, sinking into fear, realizing she never imagined things would turn out this way. Reacting quickly, Wu scoops up the two kids and bolts toward a nearby staircase. His only plan is to make it to the top floor and call for help. As they scramble upward, the girl sobs, pleading for them to leave her behind. The little boy points out that the monster has caught up once again, causing Wu's legs to shake with fear. Despite this, when the girl pleads to be left behind, Wu somehow manages to find a flicker of courage. He gently sets her down and draws his knife, his eyes brimming with tears. With a shaky voice, he urges the kids to run, determined to hold off the monster as long as he can. He says a few encouraging words, trying to give them the strength to push forward. He tells them to hurry up the stairs and call for help, hoping his sacrifice buys them enough time. The children rush upward, pleading for Wu to hold on until they return with help. As they vanish, Wu drops any pretense of heroism, fully aware he stands no chance against the monster. In a swift, brutal moment, the creature hurls him against a glass window. The window shatters, sending Wu plummeting from the building. During the fall, his mind drifts to his past, overwhelmed by thoughts of his own insignificance and failures. But then, something unexpected occurs. He spots someone racing up the side of the building toward him. It's Yujin, our hero. Wu initially assumes it's a figment of his imagination, but the sight brings a deep sense of comfort. Yujin quickly catches up and jumps to shorten the distance. He asks Wu to quickly grab on and catches his hand. A spider-like monster moves toward the duo, but the dragon slayer skillfully evades it using his tentacle powers. Wu, startled by the sight of the tentacles, feels a wave of fear wash over him. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he questions the hero about the strange appendages emerging from his back. However, Yujin casually dismisses his concerns, suggesting that Wu must be imagining things since nothing like that exists. Before Wu has the chance to press further, our F-ranker swiftly delivers a precise chop to his neck, causing him to lose consciousness. When Wu eventually regains awareness, he is met with the surprising realization that he is now back in the dorm, utterly shocked. Wu wonders if it had been a dream, but after seeing the same two kids from earlier on the news, he becomes certain it was real. Before his panic escalates, our hero shows up with a bowl of soup for him. Without delay, Wu questions our hero about the tentacles he saw coming from his back. Yujin, however, tricks him, claiming there are no such tentacles and that the World Edge Hunters were the ones who saved him. Wu, unconvinced, insists that he doesn't recall anything like that. To shift the topic, our Dragon Slayer grabs Wu by the shirt and shakes him, demanding to know why he had run away. Yujin complains about how worried he is, thinking he might never see Wu again. Hearing that someone still cares for him, Wu begins to cry. Our F-ranker, concerned, asks if Wu is hurt and in need of a healer, but Wu shakes his head, explaining that Yujin's words made him feel like a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Wu then nervously asks if he'll still stay on our hero's friend list, even if he ends up with a useless skill once the knives are sharpened. This angers Yujin, who demands to know if that's why Wu ran away. In an effort to encourage him, Yujin reminds Wu that he's already doing more than well enough without a skill. Trying to lighten the mood, he adds that he's become addicted to Wu's cooking and just couldn't live without it. All this heartfelt confession fills Wu with happiness, and he promises to cook for our hero whenever he desires. As night falls, Wu returns to his sharpening business, this time with a clear mind. While sharpening the blades, he reflects on his past memories. He recalls the dark time when he contemplated suicide, but suddenly experienced an awakening. Though his skill seemed useless, that awakening granted him a subsidy of 1,000,000 won, all of which he used to pay off his debts. He never felt like a true protagonist and often envisioned himself slowly drowning in dark waters. Just when he had lost all hope of living, Yujin approached him, extending a hand in friendship. Initially uncertain, Wu felt gratitude but was also haunted by lingering anxiety. Even while sharpening the knives, Wu struggles to think of anything positive. However, when he hears a little child calling herself worthless, he realizes he has been wrong all along. Yujin never looked down on him because of his rank, and never tried to force him into roles that didn't suit him. As he wipes away his tears, it dawns on him that our hero has been supporting him all this time. Yujin believed in him when he could not believe in himself. With this realization, Wu vows to overcome his anxiety. A sense of determination fills him like a surge of rage, and he feels the countdown of the sharpening approach to the 10,000 threshold. Before his eager eyes, an emblem of a double S-ranked skill appears, and the system informs him that he has earned the title of Master of the Golden Skill. The next morning, a little panic breaks out in the area as people express concern over the disappearance of the S-tier magic stone. A worker at the scene asks a lady making a fuss if she hasn't seen the latest news. They inform him that the magic stone has found its master. In the next scene, an S-ranked majestic spear is seen in the hands of Yerem. She has taken it out to test the first weapon crafted by Wu, known as Parmeni's Ice Tree Spear. Determined to assess its strength, she aims the spear at the lake. In an instant, the entire lake freezes solid. The guild captures the footage and displays it on a public platform, proudly introducing the world to the 16th S-class weapon, the only one ever crafted by a human. The South Korean Association guarantees the tier of the weapon using the appraisal skill and announces the name of the manufacturer. Interviewers turn to Wu, asking him about the highest class he could potentially produce. In response, Wu reveals that there is no limit, but to create a double S-tier weapon or even higher, he would need to gain more experience. Kim, standing alongside our hero, finds this revelation truly amazing. He points out that they will now need to appoint guards for Wu's safety. Yujin informs Kim that, according to Wu, simply gaining the skill has boosted his stats to C rank. However, Kim struggles to comprehend this, as he has never heard of anything like it before. The scene shifts back to last night. Wu invites our hero into his room and proudly presents the weapon he crafted. Using his subspace pouch skill, he reveals a whole inventory of valuable items he acquired along with the skill. He further shows our F-ranker an entire encyclopedia dedicated to weapon production. As our hero sees all the impressive things Wu has received, he lies back in disgust on the couch, recalling that he barely got an explanation for his L-ranked skills, let alone anything like this. Wu then asks our hero if he wants to see his smithy. Hearing the word smithy, our hero quickly perks up as Wu opens a golden door to a workshop, allowing our hero to enter alongside him. Impressed by the cool surroundings, our hero remarks that with a setup like this, Wu wouldn't even need to worry about any potential kidnappings. As our hero enters the smithy, he can barely close his mouth in amazement. Yujin finds it astonishing to see a burning furnace that operates without any fuel. As he takes a closer look, Wu warns him to step back, explaining that it is a fire spirit. The fire spirit greets its master and introduces itself as his Moir. Our hero, amazed, comments that he has only seen such creatures in games. Wu shares that the fire spirit assisted him in creating the weapon, explaining that everything was programmed by the previous master to help him learn the basics. Yujin finds the mention of a previous master strange and argues how there could be a previous master when Wu is the first ever weapon producer. Wu replies that he is just as clueless, explaining that all the previous master left behind is a bouquet and a card written in a language that, strangely enough, only he can read. When he translates it, he finds that it is simply a welcome message. Yujin recalls that traces of civilizations are often found in the dungeons and wonders if this old master from the smithy lived in another isekai world. As our hero contemplates the reality behind the dungeons, Wu hands him the bouquet, insisting that it all belongs to him. Wu further pledges his loyalty, telling Yujin that he will let him decide everything. Hearing this, our hero can hardly contain his excitement as everything seems to be falling into place, just as he had planned. However, he strangely adds that Wu doesn't have to listen to him. He then reveals that he has been hiding a secret from Wu all along. Yujin confesses that he never knew Wu to begin with. Wu tries to say that he is already aware of this, but our hero continues to apologize, expressing his reluctance and asking Wu to do as he pleases. Although our hero initially thought of using Wu for his own benefit, his soft heart leads him to do the opposite. Wu thanks our hero but then hands over the bouquet of flowers to him. Furthermore, he decides to give his first ever weapon to Yerem from the World's Edge Guild, arguing that the guild has helped him a lot. Meanwhile, our hero, sitting next to Kim, feels disgusted at the thought of letting his future investment slip away. Despite his feelings, Yujin acknowledges that seeing Wu prosper feels like a win-win situation. Kim then asks if Wu would be able to work independently now, to which Yujin replies that he doesn't see a reason why not, especially since he would be welcomed wherever he goes. Kim tries to convince Yujin to be a bit more selfish, but our hero pretends to be indifferent. Yerem, after receiving the weapon, first thanks Wu for it and then mentions our hero. Upon hearing his name, Yujin spits out his drink, caught off guard by the unexpected mention. Wu agrees with Yerem and starts praising our hero, even referring to him as his benefactor. As the crowd's attention shifts toward Yujin, he is seen hiding his blushing face. Meanwhile, Wu and Yerim intentions are crystal clear. They say all this to ensure the safety of our F-ranker. A few days pass in the blink of an eye. Our Dragon Slayer finds himself growing bored with nothing to do, especially since his blacksmith boy has gone into hibernation in his smithy. He calls out to his baby lion, asking if it wants to go for a walk, but the cub appears to be drained of energy. Yujin wonders if the kidnapping has traumatized the little creature. A lady passing by notices this and offers to accompany them to the training room. Her name is Kang So-young, and she is acting as a bodyguard. She explains that she has been specially recruited by Sung directly from England. There's news circulating that she and her brother, Yu Hyun, have plans for the future together. As So-young accompanies our hero to the training area, she mentions that the kidnapping news shocked her, and she is relieved to find him in one piece, claiming that he is her last hope. She explains that she possesses a double S-ranked dragon riding skill. However, the challenge lies in the fact that dragons are known to be the most difficult creatures to tame, making it nearly impossible for her to use her skill effectively. So-young shares that she has high hopes connected to our hero's abilities, as dragon nests frequently appear within his grandmaster jurisdiction. Seeing her enthusiasm, our hero blushes, realizing how cute his future sister-in-law is. But unexpectedly, So-young asks our dragon slayer to be the one who raises her child, referring to the baby dragon. This request disgusts our hero, who argues about her choice of words. He recalls the culprit behind this notion, which is Lady Moon. They enter the training room, but Peace lies lazily on the floor, as if it has lost all interest in life. It clings to our hero, refusing to come down. He tries shaking it off, but it remains stubbornly in place. He asks So-young if there's a way to take the pet out for a walk. She thinks for a moment and then mentions that her Jupiter Guild has a garden on the rooftop. Wasting no time, she makes arrangements with Sung for a car. Meanwhile, the Jupiter Guildmaster sits by a beautiful aquarium, preparing to greet his guests. As the scene shifts, our hero arrives at the rooftop garden and finds it truly beautiful. Lady So-young informs him that the area has been restricted, allowing him to use it freely. Our Dragon Slayer tries to reassure Peace, making the baby beast understand that the palace is safe for it. He even points out that the lady next to him, referring to Kang So-young, is also very nice. Somehow, the two manage to convince the baby monster that everything here is safe. Upon seeing the vibrant flowers, Peace becomes excited, and in the blink of an eye its energy returns, making it clear that all it needed was a change of pace. So-young turns to our hero and says that she can arrange this outing at any time, adding that it would be wonderful if Peace and her dragon could get along in the future. Yujin grows curious and asks So-young what kind of dragon she is waiting to hatch. She replies that it is a rank 3 flying dragon known as the Winged Black Needle Dragon. She describes it as a dragon full of stamina, with jet black needles enveloping its body. So-young finds those thorns really cute, and what she loves most is that the dragon's tail is filled with poison. As our hero enjoys his time with the lady, he reflects on the fact that ever since his return, he hasn't had a moment of leisure like this, and he feels genuinely pleased. Although Yujin feels a bit uncomfortable, he quickly dismisses the thought, convincing himself that it's not like the Grandmaster would come here. Just as he thinks this, his fear resistance and perception skills activate. Talk of the devil. It turns out the Grandmaster is already here for a visit. As he approaches our F-ranker, Song explains that he had no reason not to come since his most valuable guest is present. Seeing the world's strongest hunter in front of him, presenting him with treats, leaves our hero flabbergasted. Being poured tea by the world's strongest hunter is no joke. As the two men sit across the table, Sung hands over a piece of bone to Yujin for his piece. It appears to be a dragon wing bone, which is loved by high-ranking carnivorous monsters. Peace seems to adore it instantly. The Grandmaster then offers his condolences for the kidnapping incident, causing Yujin to blush. Sung states that considering Yujin is a guardian of an S-ranker, a beast tamer, and is protected by the world's only blacksmith, there is no one in the world who can compare to him. He tells our hero that all the guilds are willing to grant him whatever he asks for. With a playful smile, he teases Yujin to give it a try. Our hero grows nervous, thinking about the Grandmaster's formidable personality. He decides to play along, replying that since he is merely an F-ranker taking his own safety, the Grandmaster then reveals the reason for his visit. He explains that all the guilds have been discussing the possibility of allowing Yujin to raise a second high-ranking monster, which he would nurture for his own protection. Taken aback, Yujin reacts as if he knows nothing about this. In response, the Grandmaster remarks that his brother might be so overprotective that he doesn't share important information with him. At this point, our Dragon Slayer realizes that reversing time was the best choice he ever made. If he had wished for something else, like a taming skill, he would likely be living a secluded and boring life. As the Grandmaster sips his tea, he argues that our hero is already in favor with most of the guilds, and if he wanted, he could even raise a whole monster army. Yujin responds by saying that the laws might not allow him. To this, the guild leader replies that while that may be the case for now, considering how quickly the dungeons are expanding, such laws are bound to change over time. In 5 years at most, his very existence might become peerless, as everyone would be in need of a beast mount. As sweat trickles down Yujin's face, he wonders whether Sung is praising him or, conversely, testing his abilities. Meanwhile, Yuhyun and Yerim are engaged in conversation. Yerim mentions that when she used her white corpse skill, she discovered that an attempt had been made to put our hero to sleep with a sleeping powder, but somehow it didn't work on him. She argues that Yuhyun's brother doesn't even have any detox items, which likely indicates that he might be hiding something from them. As the scene shifts, the Grandmaster himself is driving our hero to his place. Yujin asks if it's okay for an S-ranker like him to be out and about like this, arguing that it wouldn't have any effect on their negotiations. Suddenly, Sung's hand moves toward our hero, making it seem as if he intends to strangle him, but instead he fastens his seatbelt, leaving Yujin shocked. The guild leader adds that he can think of this as compensation for not being able to help him during the kidnapping incident. He holds the MKC guilty for what happened, but is also pleased because it led to a visit from our hero. Sung even proposes the idea of cutting ties with the guild, which triggers our hero's memories. He recalls that the MKC was the first guild among the larger ones to fall. Contemplating the future makes Yujin suspicious of the guildmaster, especially since he lacks information about his origins, and notices that Sung's skin pigment is a bit different from others. He then wonders if he could use his sprout skill on the guy, and decides to sneak a peek at his status menu. Pretending to read a billboard across the window, he attempts to look at the status menu when, suddenly, the Grandmaster grabs him by the neck. His fear resistance quickly kicks in as he feels immense pressure from the Grandmaster's grip. It seems as if the guy already knows what Yujin was planning, but the question remains, how? After all, he hasn't even used his skill yet. Yujin asks Sung if he wishes to kill him by following in the footsteps of the MKC. Just like that, the atmosphere grows tense as the Grandmaster releases our hero, muttering some very suspicious words about how neither of them has done anything. As they arrive at Yujin's building, Kim and the director are already standing tall and imposing. Just as the Grandmaster opens the door, our hero rushes out as if he's about to burst, quickly taking his place beside his papa. Oops, his bodyguard. The director asks the S-ranker what his purpose is for coming here, arguing that it puts them at a disadvantage when such a guest arrives without warning. However, Sung replies that he had already informed him that an A-ranker or above would be escorting the Golden Hen. Director Seok raises more concerns, questioning whether the Grandmaster has forgotten how much fuss is created when an S-ranker visits another guild. The Grandmaster remains calm, asking if he deserves to be treated so poorly. He explains that he has come to ensure the safety of their beast tamer. Stepping forward, he presents our hero with a bouquet of flowers along with B-ranked earrings imbued with a barrier skill, items worth at least 1,000,000,000. He explains that he noticed the earrings were missing from our hero after the incident, so he decided to gift him a fresh pair. After presenting the gifts, he takes his leave, hoping to establish a closer connection with our hero. As the scene shifts, our hero tests his new earrings. He asks Peace to use his rocket blast skill, but the poor animal gets blocked off easily. Noticing how awful his pet smells, as if it hasn't had a bath in ages, he decides it's time for a wash. Taking his baby for a bath, he feels happy that his guard lady Soyoung's plan worked out. However, remembering the commotion director Seok made upon seeing the Grandmaster, he decides to refrain from revisiting that place for the time being. He then recalls that he has 2 influence 50 such S-rankers and wishes he could grab their systems by the collar to complain. Finding his master deep in thought, Peace tries to escape the bath but gets caught by Yujin. Our protagonist scolds his pet, but when he carefully looks at what he's holding, he realizes it's not his pet, but a dummy. Just as he wonders if Peace has learned a substitution skill, Yun shows up, claiming that he is the one who brought it. Yujin asks if he's back from Japan and if the doll he brought was from there as well. Yun displays all the fancy items he bought during his visit, including a hairband and a bag. He hands the hairband to our hero, insisting he wear it, arguing that it could become a public trend if he wears it out. Yujin then comes to the point, asking if all Yun did there was play around, or if he actually got any work done. Yun quickly hands over a tablet, claiming he has completed the tasks. Seeing the tablet, our F-ranker feels impressed, but when he finds the information about the dungeons empty, he questions it. Yun replies that for some reason he cannot enter a dungeon. Whenever he tries, he gets bounced back. Our hero makes a serious face, suggesting that it might be possible since he himself possesses power from the dungeons. He suddenly thinks that if Yun and the dungeon are similar to one another, he might be able to contact the system using him. He hugs the guy, insisting that he try teleporting while still held close. Yunyun objects to the idea, but Yujin argues that he won't let go until he agrees. With no other way to escape our hero's grip, Yunyun teleports him to the top of a building. As he continues his teleportation, our F-ranker finds the sensation quite similar to passing through a dungeon gate. Just as Yujin had expected, the system window begins changing as it did while he was in the dungeon. He thinks that he could have a proper conversation with the system if he continues borrowing Yunyun's powers like this. He encourages the guy to keep it up, but the poor soul is already sweating. Yunyun mentions that the feeling of being hugged somehow urges him to wrestle. Unable to control himself, he slams our hero onto the floor, but then immediately grows worried, reflecting on his actions. Yujin's barrier skill saves his gut. He quickly opens the system menu, hoping to receive some notifications. This time, however, he finds the code displayed vertically with numerous grammatical mistakes. He wonders if the system is unable to influence this side of the world. While comforting Yunyun, he decides to dive into a dungeon again. He dismisses Yunyun, telling him that he will reach out again when needed. Unbeknownst to them, Yunyun sees a resemblance between his granny and our hero, finding them strikingly similar. Yunyun teleports our F-ranker back to his dorm. As the scene shifts, Yujin successfully books an F-ranked dungeon for himself. He quickly changes into his new outfit for the day, trying to hide his identity. Considering he still has Blackie skills, now is the perfect time for him to enter the dungeon to have a chit-chat with the system. Our boy moves like he's starring in his own Assassin's Creed episode, throwing in some flashy, unnecessary moves along the way. Eventually, he reaches the first obstacle blocking his path. Activating his stealth skill, he turns invisible and makes his way toward the elevator he needs to infiltrate. As luck would have it, a guy delivering lunch shows up at just the right moment, and our boy effortlessly slips inside. And with his Dragon Slayer swag, he sneaks right past even the sharp A-rankers without breaking a sweat. But then comes the next challenge, the dreaded beeping metal detector. Noticing a businessman being held up for inspection, our guy seizes the chance. He sprints from behind the man and slides at lightning speed through the machine, smoothly continuing on his way while the poor guy gets a full-on pat-down. He finally arrives at the facility housing dungeon doors. He thanks his luck that the guards don't even bother to watch the F-rank dungeons. Before diving in, our protagonist sets his goal to contact the system and flee ASAP. He double-checks his supplies, with special regard for the gate stone gifted by Yu Hyun. Glad he snagged it back then, our boy promises to return in one piece, maybe even stop his risky stunts. Jumping into the forest dungeon, he is surprised by the sheer density of trees. A group of ape monsters spot him from a blind spot. Thinking it's easy prey, the shrieking monkeys lunge at him. Unlucky for them, Yujin's dragon tentacles slaughter them. Our boy continues his stroll through the dungeon, waiting for the system to contact him again. He keeps destroying all the monkeys, literally birthing a mountain of corpses. Yet all his yelling, my guy gives up. Out of nowhere, the long-awaited system message appears, startling his soul out. Spelling cryptically with math characters, the system says apologies that it's not its fault. Confused, he reads the next message to pop up, which shows a description of the wish stone. Scratching his head, our curious F-ranker finds the stone's limits start to blur before the text magically vanishes, replaced by a weak apology. Still clueless, my guy asks why they would apologize. Then it clicks, he realizes the big lie about no resurrection. The plot hole of the century is finally addressed. How the hell is a time-rewinding stone not able to revive one damn human? When asked to explain, the system replies that its lips are tied. Fired up, our hero vows to defeat whatever monster it takes to get the truth. But instead of the fight he expects, the system bombards him with notifications. The system team bombards him with messages and implore him not to be mad since they'll explain everything soon. The wall of text promises to explain everything soon, but warns there's serious danger if they get caught talking to him. They request a single week for preparation, but Yujin's stat boost will be long gone by then. He wonders how could enter the dungeon again as a weak F-ranker. Even worse, what powerful entity is out there that even scares the system? Just as he's lost in thought, the space before him cracks open. A blinding surge of energy floods his vision. Before the messages disappear, he catches one last glimpse. Bracing himself, he figures all the messages will correspond to an equally terrifying monster headed his way. A giant beam of light descends before our F-ranker, foreboding for what's to come. However, the settling dust reveals a tiny white ball of fur. Reminded of Mochi, he cringes, watching the little fur ball tumble around like a confused snack. Despite the adorable sight, he hides in the bushes out of caution. Upon analysis, corrupt data reveals that it is an F-class baby monster. While my guy debates whether to slaughter the little Mochi, it tries to swallow a poisonous magic crystal. He dives in like a hero and saves the adorable thing, only to realize he's potentially holding death in his hands. But soon, his heart melts seeing the fluffy thing cry. As he plans to feed the mochi magic crystals which it loves, he is ambushed by a raging monkey. Soon, he's surrounded by an entire swarm of monkeys. Telling the tiny fluff ball to hang tight, he sets out to farm some magic crystals for it. After a short fight, our guy finally slays the boss and clears the dungeon. On the way, the tiny mochi apparently gobbled up every magic crystal that dropped. Wondering if it can eat the boss crystal twice its size, my guy watches the voracious little chick latch for its life. He plucks it off until he crushes it down to a manageable size. Suddenly, the system congratulates our boy with a flashy S-rank title, Miracle Rookie. Turns out, soloing the dungeon as an F-ranker earned him an insane bonus, double drops for life. His excitement skyrockets, but just as quickly he's crushed by the realization that his stat boost will disappear soon, making him unable to enter the good dungeons. Plopping the tiny mochi on its back, he wonders if he can score similar titles by soloing E and D rank dungeons. So while he resolves not to waste his stat boost, the mochi now named Peepo is done and dusted with his crystals. Now back at the dorm, peace-devouring Peepo gives him a big shock. Stuck in a conundrum, he regrets his idiocy in bringing a bird into a cat's cage. He contemplates if it was smart to bring the cute yet mysterious little monster home. While his monstrous kitty pounds the door, Yoo-hyun shows up, catching his brother in a weird squat outside his own room. Startled, our hero accidentally tosses Peepo, which immediately triggers his little bro's instincts. When his brother asks if it's a chick, Yoojin outright admits that it's a monster. Yoo-hyun's jaw drops. He shakes his older brother down for answers, but our genius F-ranker fumbles for an excuse, saying he took the creature in because it was abandoned. Eventually, Yoo-hyun gives up and says they need to talk, but Yoojin seizes the moment to ask for help, calming Peace down. The brothers approach the furious baby lion, trying to convince it not to eat Peepo. With no progress, Yoo-hyun gets down to business. He mentions that he wanted to discuss the recent kidnapping incident, assuming Yoojin's trauma has passed by now. Frustrated by Peace's constant interruptions, he casually picks up the fluffy kitty and hurls it like a baseball across the room. Yoojin is appalled, watching his little bro dusts off his hands and return to their conversation like nothing happened. That's when our guy snaps. Extremely disturbed, he questions why his brother tossed his cute buddy. He tries to explain to Yoo-hyun that what he did was wrong, but his brother innocently claims there's no harm done. He points out that the C-rank cub has high stats and is perfectly fine. Yet Yoojin keeps up the lecture, leaving his brother looking confused. His little brother suggests he calm down, but our furious F-ranker tells him to mark his words. He explains Peace's value to him, using So-young from the Jupiter Guild as an example. The lady said she takes care of her partner like her own baby, and even though their guildmaster gave Peace a gift, the beast's actual owner is throwing it around like a basketball. Yoo-hyun claims that he undoubtedly values Peace. Then he goes and makes it worse by calling Peace essential equipment for the guild. Yoojin starts scratching his head in frustration. He tells his nincompoop brother that this is exactly why Peace hates him. Yoo-hyun begins throwing out excuses, but Yoojin tries to drive home the real issue. His brother hasn't put in any effort to please Peace. Even Peepo the chick backs him up. Then, his clueless brother messes up again by replying that at least he pays for Peace's food. Sick of explaining, our Oni-chan asks if his brother even bothered to help, when he's raised Peace all by himself. In the end, the guildmaster looks down and apologizes, leaving our guy wondering if he actually means it. His memory flashes back to childhood, recalling how Yoo-hyun used to break tree branches without a care for rules or consequences. Calming down, he tells his brother to try giving Peace a hug now and then. Yoo-hyun, looking a bit confused, gladly goes in for a hug with his brother. But under Yoojin's guidance, he reluctantly settles for an air hug with the fluffy lion. Feeling satisfied, our hero sits back on the couch with a sigh, and the two enemies immediately move apart. Suddenly, Peace waves a paw and gazes up with those puppy eyes. Thinking Peace misunderstood the scolding and feels bad for Peepo, Yoojin tries to make the two beasts reconcile. He gently asks Peace not to bully its new sibling, but the mischievous kitten starts licking the fluff ball. Watching his gullible brother forgive the naughty little lion, Yoo-hyun is entertained by the whole scene. Considering the risks, our boy decides to give them separate rooms. His little brother reminds him about getting a checkup, but Yoojin cuts him off, asking if he's free next week. He suggests they go dungeon hunting together so he can analyze his little bro's skills and improve coordination with Peace. So Yoo-hyun quietly agrees. Observing his carefree brother, he ponders over what his brother is obviously hiding. Together they tackle two dungeons, an E-class cave and a D-class lake dungeon. As expected, the system contacts him each time he enters. As a bonus, clearing the dungeons as an F-ranker grants him overpowered S-class passives. But this irritates our hero, who has no attack skills to benefit from the 2x multiplier. Still, his complaints pay off after the second dungeon. Our hero gains an S-class stealth status, making him nearly invisible to stalkers. And his new meme skill isn't useless either. It lets him share an S-class status effect when he's in contact with a friend. Back in his room, he mulls over how to make the most of the attack and sharing status. While Peace is happily munching down its food, Peepo leaps in an attempt to snatch the magic crystal jar from its master. Apparently, due to the unique circumstances that birthed the little white furball, it's turned into a true anomaly. None of the tamers have been able to tame it, and its growth conditions remain a mystery. So Yujin decides to keep using his keyword, which seems to have some effect. He then watches as Peepo climbs onto Peace's head, creating a picture-perfect moment. Loving the furball's adorable antics, the master tamer decides to make this photo his profile pic. As expected, it's an instant hit with followers flooding in. But the magical moment gets interrupted by Yun, who asks his boss out for a night. Noticing the fluff ball recently gone viral, he feeds it a A-rank magic crystal massive for its size. Peepo's dad starts panicking, scolding the gluttonous chick not to swallow everything that enters its mouth. Unbeknownst to him, his scolding brings memories of a long-lost granny to the Dokaibi's mind, all thanks to the skill's side effects. Time goes on, and a project to build the monster training facility is established. Right next to the guild building, large amounts of cash are burnt to make it as fast as possible. As he's sorting his clothes, our protagonist starts thinking about all the work he will have, helping Dr. White and Wu succeed in their careers, raising new monsters for big guilds and recruiting more S-rankers. Yujin has a midlife crisis, recalling his original end goal to chill and relax. After sulking a bit, he makes talking with the system first priority. It's quite important, considering how they changed the description of the wish stone purely on a whim. Even though it ended on a good note for him, the "not my fault" message is particularly bothersome. He wonders if it hints at some glitch in his rewind, especially since the system started talking to him out of nowhere in this new timeline. All these thoughts stir up some frustration, and he resolves to get solid answers during his next dungeon dive. However, in that very dungeon dive, our hero faces his biggest regret. Pointing a sword at him is none other than his own brother, with whom he should have had a heart-to-heart long ago. His memory flashes back to the Wu's epic food at the dining table. Wanting to help, our boy tries frying eggs, but Wu insists on handling the cooking himself. He gathers his family, aiming to enjoy a lavish meal together and spend some quality time. Yerim and our big brother kick things off by praising the food, but Yu-hyun, ever the contrarian, decides he'll only eat the eggs he cooked, throwing off the warm vibes. Trying to instill some manners, Yujin scolds his brother to be a bit more polite, though Wu brushes it off, saying they don't need to be forced friends, especially since he's planning on leaving the guild soon. Surprised, Yu-hyun asks if the chef blacksmith is leaving with Yujin. This reminds our boy of the funny scene seeing director Seok beg Wu, who politely refused him, to follow in his buddy's steps. Lighting up, Yerim is delighted to know that his new building now has the best tamer and blacksmith in town. Seeing his brother's eagerness to leave, Yu-hyun starts sulking. It's kinda impressive how long it took for him to realize his loss. To show how being kind works in their favor, our guy tries to lighten the mood by offering Wu his own penthouse. Still, Wu politely declines, saying he'd rather be there to craft equipment for our boy any time. After a bit of playful banter, he checks if Yu-hyun has picked up on anything. But the guildmaster quietly sips his water, with sheer negativity oozing from him. Later, while washing the dishes with Yerim, Yujin jokes that he couldn't even digest the food with his brother's weird attitude. He understands him being upset with Wu, but even hearing the good news of his brother's great success didn't cheer him up. Suddenly, he realizes it's all about jealousy. Yerim suggests it could be related to Yujin gaining independence. He doesn't see a problem with that, being the elder brother after all. Yerim, though, almost lets slip Yu-hyun's suspicions about Big Bro's secrecy, before backtracking and pretending he's just worried about a security issue. This stings Big Bro, especially regarding his stats, so Yerim tries to reassure him. Then, he flashes back to mistake number 2, not recognizing something was off in his brother's attitude. Even though he gifted his little brother flowers, Yu-hyun's reaction was colder than expected. He just passed them off to his secretary to keep. My guy hoped the surprise bouquet might brighten his brother's day. Completely ignorant to what's wrong, he glances to see his perturbed little brother driving quietly. In this tense atmosphere, he contemplates finally having an honest chat. Yet things take a turn inside the dungeon. While our protagonist is busy talking to his tamed beast, Yu-hyun is on high alert. Suddenly, a group of white ape monsters ambush them. Peace, once a cute kitten, now transforms into a fierce beast, charging in with energy. While our tamer is impressed, his brother brushes it off as basic animal instinct, explaining that it's their innate desire to hunt each other. Tamers, he adds. Simply let the monsters handle the threats while they relax on the front lines. Taking this in stride, my guy thinks it's perfect for leveling up his companion. But in his driest tone, Yu-hyun reminds him their goal is to level up the F-rank master, not his pet. Annoyed, our hero wonders how long his brother's weirdness will last. Anyways, they delve deeper into the forest. A monster attacks Yujin from above, so he taunts it to attack him. That is, before his little brother catches it midair and swiftly finishes it off. Each time Yujin encounters a monster, his brother eliminates it faster than he can respond. So when Yu-hyun's blue feather skill hits him in the face, Yujin finally snaps. He questions why his brother keeps interrupting his training, only to be lectured that it's too dangerous for him. At the end of his patience, he confronts his brother, asking if something's bothering him. But Yu-hyun continues his killing spree, replying that it's pointless to talk to someone who's dishonest. This hits a nerve in our protagonist, who counters that his little brother never opens up to him either. He recalls Moon Hyuna and director Seok's attitudes when they exposed Yu-hyun's past misdeeds. He complains that his brother always keeps him in the dark about serious matters. Suddenly, Yu-hyun gives our hero a scare as he strikes down the monster just behind him. The guildmaster continues that he wished to protect his brother while he built his team, but then confesses that Yujin's faction grew too big. Admitting his jealousy, Yu-hyun reveals his struggle to accept his brother's success. Hearing this, our caretaker can't believe his little bro would feel that way. He assures the little guildmaster that he no longer needs to be babied. Yujin claims that he has enough protection and influence already. Irritated, Yu-hyun scoffs that it's not the issue. When asked what the real problem is, the little brother vents out his frustration with a fiery blast. Finally giving in, the S-ranker requests his elder brother just stay put. He pleads with him not to do anything or go anywhere, leaving it all to him. With a serious look, he begs Yujin never to set foot in a dungeon again. Recalling his brother asking for the same thing in the past, Yujin asks his elf his little brother can't share something with him. Suddenly, a system panel appears and invites him to talk. Catching the brothers off guard, a horrified Yujin vanishes right before his brother's eyes. Watching him reach out for his dear bro, his soul shatters from pain. At the absolute worst time, Yu-hyun is left alone, unaware where his brother could have gone. Meanwhile, our protagonist is swept up in a whirlwind of dungeon energy. Suspended midair, the F-ranker is greeted by a smiley emoji, calling him its dear honey. Suddenly, multiple avatars show up as emojis. Completely lost, our protagonist hesitantly asks if they are the ones behind the system. So the delighted smiley emojis express their understanding and welcome him, calling him honey once again. Feeling a bit strange, he requests they call him by his name. But before he can say it, a giant hand emoji shushes him, warning that names are off limits. The teardrop emoji jumps in, explaining that sharing too much information could sever their connection. They whisper that names hold heavy info that will put a target on everyone, in the eye of a certain they. Of course, Yujin's next question is about this them entity, but the cute emojis collectively insist that they can never be mentioned. Anyway, the system team apologizes for lying to him about the wish stone, but our hero replies that all it worked out quite well for him and his friends. Satisfied, the red smiley moves the conversation forward. Worried about his previous timeline, our boy asks about its fate and if anything bad happened. After a suspenseful pause, the team advises him in unison not to worry about that, revealing that time was only affected for him. Oof, I guess that means there's a world with a dead Yu-hyun. Regardless, the team offers a metaphor, describing the world as a forest with many trees, one of which is Yujin. They illustrate with magical crystals that time only rewound for Yujin's tree, his world. Thus, everything unrelated to him, like dungeons, their difficulty, and the people's lives all remain unchanged. However, they caution him that the dungeons will only get tougher from here. The team assures him they're working hard to counteract this, but the efforts from them are relentless. Materializing his S-Class album, they urge that this is why their honey must take action. They ask him to influence as many S-rankers he can, practically rendering him the Earth's hero. When he asks about the strange yearbook-like album, the team explains it's to make things feel familiar, like status windows and game mechanics inspired by Zelda and Street Fighter. They joke about almost creating an entire prophecy to match his hero theme. But then they reveal a plan to get rid of status windows. It makes sense. They're good for beginners, but people often limit themselves based on what they read there. They bring up Wu as an example, an F-ranker who shattered the idea of being doomed to a life of worthlessness. They hope more people like him will lead the way, proving that nothing is set in stone and anyone can change. This glimmer of hope sparks something in our guy. He grabs the red smiley and starts chastising it for giving him a lousy keyword. The confused smiley begs him to calm down, as he practically tries to take a bite out of it in his frustration. Facing a task to influence 50 S ranks, he jokes if they expect him to be some harem-dating sim hero, wooing every S-rank man and woman with constant declarations of love. The team, trying to avoid blame, clarifies that he can captivate monsters too. Then, the teardrop emoji chimes in, explaining that he already had the skill, they simply added a name and summary. But our Karen is not satisfied. He complains, wondering why he didn't get a cool guide, domain, and the whole package like his buddy Wu. The green emoji also swoops in, explaining that the skill already had information stored from another world, gaslighting him a bit. It hints at whether he knows about other worlds yet. They reveal that the forge came from its previous owner. Since it's rare for as much as a whole domain to be transferred between worlds, they reveal that the last owner made a sacrifice for the skill's next one. They stress again that they only add descriptions based on the info they have, and have zero control over what skills actually do. The red smiley speaks up again, excitedly celebrating the fact that his perfect caregiver skill is one of a kind. With barely any details on what it actually does, they admit they had to make things up as they went. The green one also adds that the caregiver title is a huge honor, reserved only for those acknowledged by a natural S rank. To clarify, he elaborates that most S rankers initially awaken at a lower class, and only reach their rank through intense training. However, 1 in a million starts at S rank, like Eugen's brother. These individuals are truly exceptional, but they often struggle to fit in with ordinary folks. In fact, even their parents might have trouble raising them. While the red smiley emphasizes the rarity of his title, our guy scoffs, pointing out that he never found Yuhyun difficult. But then, the cheerful emoji turns serious, warning that caretakers often die young, sometimes in place of the S rankers they protect. Contrarily, the love of their own S rank might turn into enmity. Such is the fate of a caretaker. So the team cheers their honey on, praying for his safety on the perilous path. The Emoji Power Rangers unveil his primary mission. He has 5 years to assemble his Avengers, after which they'll take over. One by one, they begin disappearing after reaching the time limit. On his way out, they tell our hero that 30 minutes have passed. Though he's deeply worried about how to face Yuhyun, the system team warns him not to reveal everything about them. Seizing the last moments, he asks for leads on dungeon research. The emojis explain that while the research remains unchanged, he should be wary of dungeons from the future popping up. He starts to ask about monsters, but the emojis cut him off, assuring him that everything will be revealed in time, whether he likes it or not. With that, our hero spirals out of the dimension and awakens flat on the floor. Panic floods over him as he wonders how to calm his little brother down. Looking around, he's shocked to see nothing but chaos and destruction. His face twists as he realizes the once familiar forest dungeon is now a barren wasteland. His thoughts come to a screeching halt when a giant lion monster suddenly pounces on him from behind. His jaw drops at the sight of an obviously high-rank monster in the beginner dungeon. Barely evading its claws, he starts plotting an escape plan since it's way beyond his skill level. However, he is astonished to see the monster's status panel, revealing it is his cute little piece. Amazed to see his baby, he calls out to it. Before he can react, Yuhyun sweeps him off his feet and hoists him onto his shoulders. Dumbfounded, our hero asks about the forest, only to realize that his S-rank brother burned it all down. Despite his best efforts to calm Yuhyun down, he's met with irritation. Desperate, he even calls for peace to help, but the lion simply pouts. Frustrated by Eugen's rambling, Yuhyun snaps, warning that if his brother doesn't quiet down, he'll go berserk. After a while, our humble F-ranker stresses that he will spill everything, but Yuhyun has had enough. Throwing him on the ground, he points his sword right in his big brother's face. He opens up saying that he was willing to watch from afar, but his brother only stepped deeper in danger. He shares his last resort to fake his brother's death while blaming the boss monster, all because our hero is involved in too much crap to deal with. He believes that despite all the hate and conspiracy theories, he admits he'll even slice off a limb as evidence, just to keep Eugen safe. Our caretaker's memory flashes back to Red Smiley's warning that caretakers often die young due to their S-ranker's love turning into something darker. With a fierce glare, Yuhyun states his plan and asks his brother to endure the pain, promising to heal him up right after. Fortunately, at the last minute, our hero's earrings form a barrier, so he seizes the moment and makes a break for it. He realizes the only reason he escaped was because Yuhyun hesitated. Eugen warns his brother that if he does anything like that again, the big bro will never see him. Unfazed and filled with contempt, Yuhyun replies that it's not like Eugen was honest before either. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, our hero orders Peace to attack his brother as a last resort. His fierce pet bits deep into his brother's arm. But the S-ranker doesn't yield, and incapacitates the pet with a bash of his sword's hilt. Seeing his baby abused, Eugen complains about his brother hurting others without remorse again. But Yuhyun pins his brother down and lifts his sword one more time. Fortunately, the blade strikes the ground inches from Eugen's head. Yuhyun's voice softens as he recalls how he used to overlook all the strange things Eugen did, just to keep up their good times. But now, He demands to know if his bro ever told him the truth. Like, did he really get the taming skill at level 10? Because he's not dumb enough to raise a monster on a whim, fully aware of the massive financial burden. He adds the strange willingness to help Wu and the others as well. The little guildmaster stresses that all of the things back on Earth are bearable. But every time Yujin enters a dungeon, something terrible happens, breaking his heart. He frowns, recalling his helplessness when his brother disappeared. On the verge of tears, he asks how he's supposed to endure such pain. Hearing his brother open up, the two have a moment. But Yu-hyun instantly retraces back to faking his death. Deciding to pass on a limb, he suggests only cutting off some flesh. My guy begs him to chill out for a second. But his brother is dead set on getting evidence, insisting he will heal his dear brother immediately after. In his final moments, Yujin howls at the system, asking what's taking so long. Suddenly, the brothers are separated by a status window. Astonished by the shimmering summon, Yu-hyun asks what happened. So our boy swiftly crawls to safety and cries that this is what he wanted to explain. He starts unveiling everything about peace, his S-rank skills, and the dungeon trips. His brother silently listens in raw confusion. Our hero explains that he's done everything for the system. He wanted to secretly figure out how it works. Worried, Yu-hyun gets smacked for asking why they would make his F-rank brother do such dangerous things. Ironically, the punch to an S-class forehead deals with self-damage. Regardless, our big brother promises that he isn't hiding everything due to a lack of trust. In fact, he trusts his brother most of all. Seeing Yu-hyun calm down, he treats peace with a potion. He then continues that the guildmaster's security measures weren't faulty. He simply used his stealth skills to slip past them. He goes on to reveal a few more of his skills, earning a wry smile from his brother at the odd mix. However, on the system's recommendation, he conceals his two strongest skills. Cuddling with his grown-up fluffy lion, he offers to answer his dear little bro's questions any time. Yujin admits to his secrecy and calls his brother's concerns valid, but he also forbids Yu-hyun from worrying like a helicopter mom. He gives him permission to interfere whenever, as long as it doesn't involve putting him in solitary confinement. Deeply apologetic, the little brother apologizes for being the one to break their bro code. Ultimately, our protagonist learns that he should spend more time with his brother. With that, the two share a heartwarming hug. Meanwhile, an annoyed Peace gets mushed between the two brothers, getting all affectionate and ignoring him. Peace suddenly shrinks back into its adorable baby form. Using his Sherlock-level deduction skills, Yu-hyun quickly concludes that the little guy must be doing this on purpose, just to be more huggable. Held tightly in Yujin's arms, the cute critter rewards him with the world's best cuddle. Meanwhile, it seems that someone is observing the brothers through a screen. The system team watches, as their honey forces his brother to apologize for hurting Peace again. The young lady wonders if the S-rank brother is too dangerous, but a tall woman points out that no one could be a better protector, given how dearly his brother clings to our caretaker. Then, someone lounging on a throne chimes in, mentioning Wu's impressive potential. The tall woman sighs, noting they might not have time to let Wu fully develop and show his true worth. A weirdo wearing wolfskin suggests they should transport him to the next world, assuming this one goes down. Out of sympathy, the young woman asks why they can't transfer Yujin too. But the tall lady is realistic. She replies that Yujin would never forgive them for forcing him to leave his loved ones behind. So, the system team crosses their fingers, hoping that their sacrifices will pay off. The tall lady then brings out a bottle of strange champagne bottle. Pouring some for the young woman, she suggests they change up Honey's room. The team of eccentrics toasts while they wait to see how this world's fate unfolds. Likewise, everything on Earth is back to normal. The two brothers are getting along swimmingly. And our hero is glad to know that his pet's training yielded phenomenal growth. Even better, Yunyun's data has led to a breakthrough for our lovely Dr. White. She can't help but praise Yujin, noting that even the association couldn't collect this much data in such a short time. Yujin, ever the humble one, accepts her thanks. However, the doctor points out how hard it was for her to get data alone since she refused to let it be commercialized by any research team. Hearing her problems, my guy proposes he can simply get her very own lab in his taming facility. Hyun's eyes light up with excitement as he lists the perks. Confused, she inquires why he would do so much for her. So he answers that it is quite obvious to make her his the scientist who'll achieve world peace, of course. Thrilled, Dr. White asks if she can also bring her friends along. He's stunned when she shows him a photo of absolute legends. Before him is the picture of future dungeon masters, who will crack the theory of dungeon formation. After a pause, he gives her a resounding yes. The deal is sealed, but Yujin still frets over the cost of setting up a lab. With the system's warning that dungeons will become more frequent, he's hoping Dr. White can wrap up her research as soon as possible. In the meantime, He uses his knowledge to cheat in the stock market. With a sly grin, he invests all his cash into the company behind the first-ever baldness cure. Then, it's back to his main mission, to tame as many S-rankers as he can. Yerem meets him at a construction site, returning from a girls' outing with Lady Moon and So Young. The guildmaster brags that she gave some lit tips to her junior, which the Ice Queen excitedly shows off. It appears they are waiting for a shipment, containing 3 baby monsters for our F-rank tamer to train. Hearing that they're about to be unloaded, Hyuna huddles our hero to the side. She asks if all is well, so he nods while living through memories of Yuhyun's yandere phase, still sending a shiver down his spine. Switching gears, she hugs him tightly, trying to charm him into letting her borrow one of the beasts. She hints that she'll give it free experience in battle and nudges him to lend it to her from time to time. Simply seeing it as a deal with a customer, our boy agrees, only for the other lady to take her turn playing with him. With innocent puppy eyes, she asks if he'll still make time for her babies, while violently gripping his hand. Watching from afar, our Ice Queen enjoys the sight of her S-rank friends bullying her frail F-rank caretaker. Meanwhile, our hero contemplates how he will manage 50 S-rank humans, let alone monsters. Then his little brother comes to his rescue. Yuhyun offers him a pendant with a translation feature for dealing with foreign interests in his taming business. To win the world's Best Brother award, Yuhyun promises unconditional support. He also assures him never to jail him, since Yujin is the most precious person in his world. The ladies burn in their jealousy while he enjoys the results of his talk no jutsu. Their touching moment ends when a worker announces that the unloading is complete. As the container opens, our hero resolves to do his best to save this world, for the sake of his dear brother. An old man hands our young master ownership tokens for his new pets. He makes small talk while his men take out the cages. He grumbles about the tough journey they endured, but suddenly a commotion erupts as one of the monsters breaks free. With a blinding gust, a wild griffin takes to the sky. Yujin stares in awe, witnessing the mythical creature brought to life by the dungeon. Watching it soar, Hyuna sighs, wishing for a ride on the majestic beast. The griffin soon locks eyes on the person holding its token, but Yujin is too caught up to react. It charges straight at him, yet Yuhyun moves him aside just in time, using enough force to leave him a bit worse for wear. The derpy bird chills on the floor before him, watching its owner knocked out cold. However, it is irritating to see something carried by the workers. It dives right on them, barely halted by Hyuna's wind skill. To her surprise, it easily glides out of her attack. Entering gamer mode, Yerem realizes it is resistant to wind and takes over. She devises a genius plan to grab it with her hands, Tarzan style. But a slap from its wings brings her back to reality. Annoyed, she asks if she can just freeze it. Realizing that would likely kill it, So Young throws over a tough dungeon cloth. So, as the sunset arrives, the wild griffin is wrapped up like a newborn. After all that running, the 3 ladies slump, looking like worn-out grandmas. So Young jokes that hunting would be way easier, wondering aloud if such a fierce monster is even tameable. As they survey the destruction caused by its tantrum, it seems impossible to curb the griffin's innate hunting instincts. Out of concern, our hero's brother suggests they slaughter it. Yet Yujin is quick to get up and refute the proposal. He laughs to assure them that the cute little guy simply doesn't know how to hold back against a frail master like him. As proof, he requests that So Young release the monster and tells his brother not to interfere. He promises with a confident grin to teach it some manners. Calling it a good boy, our master tamer invites the baby griffin. With the cutest tiny roar, it latches onto his arm, splattering some blood. Suddenly, his face twists in pain, and he dramatically flails away, crying about the bleeding. This makes the little guy guilty of its crime. Fully determined, our F-ranker invites it again after healing his injury. And so, the 3 ladies watch the cycle of pain and suffering continue in horror. With pride, he instructs the griffin to grasp how pathetically weak he is, leading to the others' awkward stares. At last, it finally perches on his spaghetti forearm, so Yujin showers it with compliments. Even those who wanted it gone earlier find themselves charmed by its cuteness. Yerem asks what they should do if it goes wild again. So he replies that they just need to cover its eyes, since the things that excited it are the other 2 caged beasts, the shadow unicorns. The other girls immediately flock to the shiny new Pokemon, and he reveals that griffins love to eat horse monsters. Hyuna sees her chance and strikes a deal, offering her guild's horse meat reserves a chance to ride the griffin. The girls express their amazement at our F-rank taming master, who seamlessly makes high-ranking monsters submit to him. With a single sentence, he instantly tames the sulking unicorns. Approving his skills, Hyuna's faith in Yujin solidifies. Meanwhile, he wonders what to name the baby horses. When he proposes Creamy and Sooty, Yurim cringes at his trash naming sense. Of course, Yuhyun worships his brother's choice as always. Elsewhere in a dimly lit ravaged building, a punk interrogates some guy. The guy getting choked pleads with her that they only failed because the target tore their blinding contract. But the woman with gaudy earrings is dissatisfied. When told that even the guildmaster didn't survive the incident at the bay, the earring lady acts surprised, before mercilessly crushing his throat. Finding her raid unfruitful, she happens to step on a bloody pile of documents. The woman then picks up a picture of our hero with her dragon claws, locking her eyes on the victim as her next target. In the meantime, our hero has already gotten comfortable with his pets, even renaming them to Pearly and Ebony, since Yareem kept nagging him like a cranky wife. However, the real troublemaker was indeed Blue, the blue-eyed griffin. The beast with the most unoriginal name makes our boy clean up after it like a maid 24/7. But with a fierce look from his senior, the adorable yet terrifying fluffy lion sets the bird brain straight. Eugen can't help but feel grateful that Peace is maintaining order, recalling how it declared its top beast status from day one. After a while, the creatures settle down for a nap, giving him a chance to rest. Exhausted, Eugen flops onto his bed, grumbling over how he's supposed to manage 50 pets. He starts tallying the 5 beasts he's already looking after when suddenly, the system notifies him of the arrival of the cursed dragon, Dio Balkisis. With a hazy mind, he shrugs it off. Suddenly it hits him when his Dragon Slayer titles activate. He checks his phone for any news on dungeon breaks. Out of nowhere, a stranger descends from a portal above him and snatches his phone. The lady straight out of JoJo starts blabbing in French. It takes Eugen a moment to activate his translation necklace. He starts piecing her words together, still confused if she's the dragon. Taking a closer look, he discovers that Miss French, Rita, is a natural-born S-ranker. Unluckily, she locks eyes with him. The woman smashes his head into the bed, having figured he's probably analyzing her stats. Our hero marks the second time when an S-ranker saw right through him, knowing she can end his life if he doesn't play his cards right. To lighten the mood, he jokes that she should have come in visiting hours and drops her name. Entertained, she decides to release him, since he's got all the guilds and his infamous brother backing him up. She reveals that her plan was to break in silently and leave once she gets what she wants. Bonking him with her finger, she declares he's no ordinary guy. Terrified, Eugen regrets his incoming death right when things were finally looking upwards. After an awkward pause, Rieta asks him if he didn't feel anything. Before he can answer, she tears open his shirt and gives him a thorough pat-down from head to toe, hoping to find a curse resistance item. Finding nothing, the cheeky S-ranker deduces that her target was concealing a curse resistance skill and must be the one who tore her contract. Seeing that he's oblivious, Rieta shares her successful business venture. She discloses that she's the one who's been selling untraceable contracts, which blinds the one who breaks the terms. Closely staring at him, she says that he's very sus, but my guy feigns innocence. This gives the sadistic lady an idea. Rita grabs him by the wrist and forcibly makes him tear apart one of her contracts. Luckily, his poison and curse resistance instantly nullifies the blinding effect. Suddenly, he's left alone panicking in bed, while Riette suddenly prepares to leave after feeding her curiosity. Sweating bullets, our guy stares at the woman who could have blinded him without a second thought if not for his resistances. Catching his baby-faced expression, Riette lets out a laugh, clarifying that she had no intention of hurting him, and simply wanted to find out why her contract failed. She explains that she thought her ability, acquired from a dungeon boss that vanished, might be defective. Intrigued, Eugen asks what she means by a vanishing dungeon. So she casually reveals that the dungeon disappeared right after she cleared it. As he falls into deep thought, she watches him closely, wondering if he has any idea about it. Memories of the system team's warning about future dungeons leaking into the present flash through his mind. Eugen realizes that his time rewind has led to this S-ranker gaining a power she was never meant to have. He recalls from his past knowledge that the dungeon boss she's describing could only be the cursed dragon Dio Balkasis. When he voices his suspicion, Rietta's eyes sparkle with recognition, and she confirms it, proudly revealing that she and her twin brother received an SSS rank title for slaying the dragon and inherited its powers. The pieces start falling into place in Eugen's mind. It's no wonder the system warned him of a dragon since Rita herself is a half-dragon. He's awed, realizing that the time rewind has created 2 unique irregulars with immense strength. But the half-dragon lady gives him a scare. Unable to believe how much he knows, she asks if he's also a half-dragon. Despite his reluctance, she recognizes the scent of something capable of destroying the twin dragon she beat. Our Dragon Slayer recalls that he did technically beat the big daddy of cursed dragons, Rauktars, which gave him his OP skills. Before he can say anything, our boy is pinned down by her. After unnecessarily sharing that she's no longer turned on by humans, she can't help but admit that meeting him has stirred up some excitement. Our Dragon Slayer stammers and tries playing innocent, But seeing that she has no intention of stopping, as a last resort, he shouts that she shouldn't wear shoes on the bed. This really turns her off, so she pouts that he's a meanie. Regardless, our Sigma tells her to leave if her business is complete. But she remembers one last thing before she leaves. Our hero goes into depression, hearing yet another woman learn from Hyuna and ask him to raise her child. Acting all girly, she requests that he raise a monster she wants. Still, tired from the guild monsters, he refuses, before she holds a knife to his neck. Copying her attitude, Yujin smiles at her way to get a favor, but recognizes that it's a good offer. Considering she's an amazingly rare S rank, even though she's dangerous, it's worthwhile for him to have a good babysitting relationship with her. He takes the opportunity to curry favor with her on certain conditions. The next day arrives with our trusty Sunghan visiting him. However, he is shocked to find our grandpa lying on the floor of his messy room. The big guy rushes over and asks what happened. Our hero complains that too much happened. In the end, his work relationship with the half-dragon lady started, including sliding into her DMs, only for undercover communication, of course. Despite remembering all the annoying things she did, he thanks God for not dying. While Sunghan takes care of him like his grandpa, he's happy that he is alone. Woo or Yu Hyun would have had trouble against her poisons and curses. In his hangover, he regrets not influencing her, especially since it would work double on a half-dragon like her. Thinking he should have just said I love you, he immediately discards the idea since she's too unpredictable. Interrupting his long monologue, Sunghan calls out to ask if he's all right. Our boy is caught off guard to see that his macho maid has made the place sparkling clean. The ideal husband then grabs his hand and offers to help anytime he's tired of training his monsters. So glad to have a grandson like him, our grandpa has a wholesome moment with Sunghan and decides to focus on those around him before dealing with the dragon lady. At that moment, a notification reveals that Sunghan is ready to be promoted to S rank. Yujin mushes his cheeks in excitement and begins reading the conditions he must fulfill. Later that day, he informs his little brother of the good news, but shares that the conditions are quite a mess.